Mm-hmm.
is that, I see a lot of people posting or referencing that, Rodney King era. And it's interesting because, right, we're talking a certain age of people that really would have resonated with.
Yeah, definitely.
I, you know, it, I wonder how many people, 21st century or Generation Zers really understood the impact of that. I
Yeah, I
can't
mean, it would have
imagine it's
been.
something. Go on.
No, I was just gonna agree with you. It would have been hard to without having grown up through it. You know.
Right. I can't imagine it's something that, they're reading about in history books.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of folks are I mean, not our folks, but a lot of folks are under the false false idea that this stuff is happening for the first time, in our recent history.
Right.
So
Right. And I mean, with Rodney King, it just happened. They just happened to have, this is before everyone had a camera in their hand, right?
yeah,
So
yep,
with Rodney King, they just happened to have a video camera there. To
right,
Was it
right.
like a storefront video camera or something like that?
Yeah, the very rare occurrence that a video camera was around to
Well,
picture
I
it going
I
down.
I'd go so far as to say the very rare occurrence where the footage wasn't erased, right?
Oh, well, that too. Yeah, camera was around, footage wasn't erased. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it was a storefront or if it was someone's personal. Maybe it was a storefront.
It's interesting though, and I don't want to sound counterproductive towards a movement. I don't want to take away from it. But I remember a friend of mine came to my house one day when old boy got choked to death in New York City,
Hmm.
and he was like, what do you think about that? And I was dismissive, and not because I had a problem, not because I felt like I was downplaying it, but I was dismissive to him in particular because you know how I can be. I can kind of be like sarcastic and cynical. And, you
Right.
know, I said to him, he had come into my basement. I was sitting at the computer. He'd come to my house and I told him come in. He came to my basement. He's like, yeah, man, what do you think about that? It just happened. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to think? And he's like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, this happens all the time. Like,
Right.
it's not new. Like, we grew up in the projects. And I say this to say, when I think about Rodney King, right, and Will Smith isn't the first person to say that this isn't new. It's being filmed now. Like,
Right.
we've all known this, right? Will Smith
Hmm.
just kind of said it, but we've all on some level have said it before.
I
You
didn't
know what
even
I
know that
mean?
he's. I didn't even know that he said that.
Yeah, he just said it recently, and people are like sharing the meme, and not to
Um,
take anything away from him. This is something that as Black people who live in the hood, who came up a certain way, like, we know this, right? Like, it's always been the case. So I say all this to say, with Rodney King, I wonder if I, again, I don't want to take away from a movement or even lessen it. I'm just, we're just talking. So I imagine those people in LA had experienced and witnessed Black people getting beat up by police multiple times over.
Absolutely.
So then the anger came when it was put on TV, right?
Hmm.
Not that there wasn't reason to be angry, but now I wonder if now we need to show you how angry we are. Like, we're tired of it. Now it's actually on TV. We have an opportunity, and I don't mean this like in a negative sense. I just mean it as an is what it is, right? We now have an opportunity to express our anger for the purposes of getting some type of change.
Well, if you watch the documentary and even the other documentary, this was a buildup. This wasn't like some calculated. Oh, we're gonna show these motherfuckers.
Right, right. No, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm definitely not saying it was like calculated and, you know what I mean, at all. That's why I keep prefacing it with, I don't want to like detract or, downplay a movement. You understand what I'm
Yeah,
saying? But
yeah.
anyway, go on.
Well, no, I was just saying like that's why the documentary that I watched showed me this 10-year span. I mean,
Hmm.
this was a buildup. I mean,
82 to 92, right?
82 to 92. And even if you remember, very presciently, NWA came out with F the Police right before this happened. because they were predicting, our hip hop prophets were predicting something was about to blow. And yeah, this had been brewing for a long time. I mean, brewing for a long time. And if you see the sentiments that are stated in the documentary that I watched today, are the same sentiments that I've been echoing today. That this was brewing for a long time, and it's the same sentiments. Like, don't
Keep in mind, I didn't see anything that you did on social media today.
No, I'm talking about in general. I'm not talking about today.
Oh, you mean today as in general
about,
today? Okay, yeah, I got you.
Yeah, exactly. Today is in general today. Just the people were concerned that that the burning and the looting was tearing down their own neighborhoods, and people were concerned that the violence wasn't directly, in response to what happened, but that people were just like kind of wilding out. It was all the same. It was all the same response. One thing that you had that was interesting though is the Koreans kind of caught in the middle, because they had a lot of stores in the neighborhood, and you see, that they're not a monolith either, right? Like, you got some of them that are just ready for it. They're like, some of these cats are like, listen, we all were trained as like men in Korea. We all know how to use our weapons. They got rifles. Some of them were on the roof. Some of them right in front of the store, all pistoled up, rifled up. They're like, we're ready to defend our businesses. And one of the guys was like, listen, men, don't go home. Go to your businesses, defend your businesses. And that was like, I mean, you have to respect that, but at the same time, that it's a recipe for, further disaster, because there's just a lot of tension in the air, and right or wrong with looting or burning, neighborhoods that maybe, don't have anything to do with the wrong that's happening. It's just going to cause some unnecessary deaths and whatnot. But yeah, it was all like the same kind of conversations that were happening. But also you see like the way that the police handled this whole situation also is like a huge part of like everything that happened. And like, to hear some of these folks tell it, they tried to like pull out early on because they foresaw that the police standing their ground was going to make things worse. So they try to like exit the situation, and some police didn't listen, kind of went in there. But I mean, it was just like, I want to kind of watch it again so I can get more details. But it's
what platform did you watch it on?
Netflix. But it's it's just
maybe
like this war zone.
I should upgrade my Netflix game.
Yeah, I mean, if not, you might be able to watch it on something else, I'm sure.
No, I have Netflix, but I'm usually watching like anime.
Oh, okay. Well, no, this was a great one. This was very, I mean, it was historical, but it was very entertaining and fascinating to watch as well. Everything from like the people in the neighborhood were just, they were ready to like, to hit up anything that was white that didn't look black, to the black people who defended, those white people who were getting hurt. It just like showed the humanity on all sides of what was happening. But so the crazy thing though, I thought about my friend who made these comments about they should have like police with. Well, you got sound in the background again. That's gonna
let me. Sorry, I was in my room looking for clothes for work tomorrow.
So go on. My friend was making these comments about the looters, and like they should have cops with automatic weapons on the roof, pointed at the looters to deter them, and all this like nonsense. And I was just telling him like, cops are already showing a lack of judgment with pointing their weapons at people, and like looters aren't actually physically hurting anyone, and that it's just not a good idea. But long story short, um, rewind back to when this documentary happened, and so this Korean woman who, she's using a translator, talking about how her son was very angry. Her son was 18 years old, and he was like trying to defend his neighborhood. He ends up getting shot and killed. I think she sees the body on television before she realizes it's her son. Lo and behold, when they find out what happens to her son, they find out that he got shot from someone from the roof. And guess who was shooting from the roof? No
The
black
Koreans.
people. Exactly. So they shot one of their own in trying to defend their own, even though these folks were all trained how to use their weapons and all of that. So it kind of goes back to my telling, my friend that he's got some rough ideas as far as what it takes to defend businesses and neighborhoods, and like, all this Rambo stuff isn't going to help. Training your weapons at citizens. But yeah, man, it was crazy. We went through it back then, and this has happened again a few times. I think back then it was like about 5 or 6 days, and I think back in 1963 it was about 6 days to a week before JFK strengthened the desegregation laws and ended up with the whole civil rights speech that led into the Civil Rights Act the next year. So if history repeats itself, sometimes it lasts about a week. Have you noticed in the news like where we're at, what's happened with all the protests / rioting around the country, if it's still like full-fledged or if it's dying down or if it's
Well, I haven't heard the rioting narrative so much, but the protest narrative is still
strong.
pretty strong. I mean, there aren't any curfews or anything, but
right, the curfews died down. So we had our
I know
curfews.
The day before yesterday, I was out at I was working at the comic shop, and when I pulled up in Elmwood Village, there were probably 300 to 400 people out there.
Elmwood and what? Like Delavan area?
No, like Bidwell, like actually the village.
The village. Okay, I gotta remember my
So
Buffalo geography.
We're talking between Forest and Bidwell.
Okay, I kind of remember those general areas.
There's a big park there. It's by Seminary.
Oh, okay. I think the park and stuff. Yep.
Yeah. So the park was packed.
And that's where the bars start up, like a little bit after that.
Yeah, the bars, and there's some restaurants and some businesses, like my friend's comic book store is there.
Okay.
And I told you I've been working in this comic book store helping them out.
Yep.
So I pull up, and there's a couple hundred people in the park, and across the street in the other park is just maybe another 100 people with signs. I wanted to stop and take pictures, but I thought maybe they'd feel uncomfortable if I was taking pictures of them. A lot of white people with MLK and BLM signs, which resonated with me, which is why I wanted to, take pictures. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, next time if you get a chance, you should. Yeah. My cousin's taking some beautiful pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was really cool. It was a nice day. It wasn't so hot. You know what I mean? As it was Saturday was really hot. You know what I mean?
Today it got up there. I was about to take my 20-minute walk, and I just didn't end up doing it today.
Maybe it was Friday that was really hot. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it got pretty hot today. It had been cool for the past couple of days.
Yeah,
I mean,
cool
bearable.
Yep.
Bearable, but it did get hot. Little humid. But no, I haven't seen anything media-wise suggesting that the protests have slowed down.
Right.
Certainly, the rioting narrative isn't something that I'm hearing so much of anymore.
Right.
Obviously, there's a few, you know, bitter people on Facebook that want to continue to promote that. You know, I saw a meme today, kind of bothered me. I saw a couple people share it. I don't know if what bothered me is when intelligent people choose to be ignorant
Mm-hmm.
to promote a point or a perspective, because that perspective that they're promoting relies on the ignorance of the subscriber.
Right.
So this meme has a female, a woman, a black woman police officer
Mm-hmm.
who was murdered by a black person. And
Okay.
it poses the question. It says this woman was murdered by a black man. I guess black lives don't matter if they're wearing blue.
Oh, I see.
And right. And I'm like, so this is a false equivalency.
Yeah.
Period. And and the thing is though, hold on before you say anything, the people who I've seen, two people share this meme, are intelligent people. One liberal, one probably conservative, but kind of somewhere in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
But intelligent people. So my first thought was, okay, so what you're doing is either you're not ignorant, so you're just assuming that role so that you can proliferate this message, knowing that it asks for anyone who subscribes to it to be ignorant. Like they have to be
Right.
ignorant to
Right.
subscribe to it. So I don't know if I'm angrier. I was more irritated about intelligent people choosing to do that, because then what's your motive, right?
Right.
Or the actual message, which is a false equivalency. I didn't speak to it. I don't sometimes I think it's just better not to speak to foolishness.
Yep. It's a waste. It's a waste of our energy. They're energy vampires, you know.
Mm.
And even people who consider themselves smart can fall victim to allowing people to suck your energy away, because it's just that's a reaction. And even though your brain is telling you, "Come on, man, don't fall for the okey doke," to
Well, that
something
one I
inside of
wasn't
you.
gonna fall for. Like you
Yeah.
gotta know it's a false equivalency. You have to know it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, there was just no point. What's the point? You already know. There's no argument I can make. You understand what I'm saying? Not that I would really make an argument, but there's no point.
Yeah.
You already know. So it's, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
you're choosing to be ignorant for the purposes of proliferating a perspective or a message. You want to make something. You want to undermine a thing.
Now, speaking of which, one message that has been proliferating a lot recently is the whole defund the police movement. Have you been
Mm-hmm.
following this?
Mm-hmm.
And John Oliver had a great segment that really showed people what it was about, because people are confused, and right-wing people use it as fodder to say, look how crazy people on the left are. What would it look like without police? Some people have been funny, and they've been dropping these memes like, oh no, what would you do if the police were defunded? Who would come to your aid 2 hours later, and take a report about you getting robbed so you can never get your stuff back, or something like that. Obviously funnier in meme form, but like the point being made. But yeah, what do you think about the defund the police movement?
So I don't know if my wife and I had a conversation about this the other day. Well, actually, I was talking to Rodney,
Okay.
and my wife kind of on the phone, and my wife kind of interjected, and I was talking about the whole abolish the police movement, right?
Okay.
And I don't know if it's the same as defund the police. First of all, I had the wrong idea, because there are people, extreme liberals And when I mean extreme, not the extreme, the furthest left, but as an
Mhm.
extreme in principle
Yeah.
that actually mean abolish police, which I just think is a bad idea. Like, really? You want, as Joey said something today on Facebook which resonated. It made sense. You want, no, actually my friend Ahmad said it yesterday. We were talking. You want to, you expect the people to actually honor and uphold the social contract without police enforcement. It's probably not going to happen. But as my wife brought to my attention today, the actual abolish, if we're talking about police, doesn't mean abolish the police. It means take away some of the responsibilities from the police that needs.
Defunding, you mean?
Well, I see. I don't know if maybe it's the same argument or same position or not. I don't know.
Okay.
I just know the one that I keep hearing is abolish the police, abolish the police, abolish the police. And, it was explained to me that what they really mean is, and I'm paraphrasing here, is to take away some of the responsibilities that we give police that they probably don't need, that causes them to operate in some cases negatively towards citizens.
Okay.
We kind of depend on police for more than what we probably should.
Yeah. No,
And
those are the exact terms of the defund the police.
okay, all right. So then, yeah, I think that's a good thing. If it's this extreme message of get rid of the police altogether, well, I think that's ridiculous.
Oh, okay, I see. So the abolition. Okay, so you're right. It's two. We're talking about two different terms that mean the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. With
Mm-hmm.
abolition, it also has a long-term goal in mind of eventually eliminating our reliance on police to secure public safety.
Say that again. The last
So,
part.
eventually abolishing the police completely.
Altogether. Yeah.
Eventually eliminating our reliance on policing to secure our public safety.
Yeah, I think that's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, the word eventually, right? I mean, it's
Yeah, but that leaves a lot of contingencies that we just can't account for. Like, contingent upon what? And then there's a whole bunch of blanks. Bridges that we don't even know exist until we get there.
Well, yeah, it's a long-term goal. I mean, it's like saying eventually we want world peace, or eventually we want to get rid of racism. We're not talking about something around the corner. We're talking about a lofty, idealistic goal.
No, I get it. And my answer to your question, if you're asking what I think about it, is I think it's ridiculous.
Okay.
Personally, because I'm a cynic. I'm cynical. So I don't trust people to uphold the social contract just because they should.
Yeah, that's not what it's saying.
No, it's what I'm saying. Like, we have a social contract, and the thing that supports the social contract are our laws. The police are put in place to protect and serve and uphold these laws.
Are they
Because,
though?
well, that's the intent.
Right.
That's the intent. I'm just
Right.
speaking about the intent.
Right.
Now, certainly we need reform. Certainly we need to take away some responsibilities, but to just take away the police, I think, is ridiculous. Just to eventually just get rid of the police. I mean, so many things would have to change, right? Like, who's carting people off to jail when they need to go to jail?
Well, it's funny you should bring that up. I mean, the abolition movement wants to get rid of jails.
Mm.
So I mean, there are different abolition movements, so I don't want to speak. I don't want to say that every person that wants to get rid of the police wants to get rid of jails. I mean, technically, they would be two different conversations, but yeah, there's a big movement to get rid of the jails, the prison system.
Mm. Yeah, I don't think the. I don't know. I don't have enough specifics. Like I can't see the future, and I don't know what a plan like that is contingent upon. Like what has to happen? What type of society do we have to become so that we can uphold our social contract,
These are
right?
the
So
exact questions that these people contend with, and I mean, I assume if you're a good plan maker, you start with these questions that you're talking about, and you go backwards, and you say, okay, what would a society have to look like for us to do blah blah blah, what we need, blah blah blah, and you go from there.
like on some level, we're talking about planned utopia,
Mm-hmm.
which for all intents and purposes is a myth until it becomes a reality, right? Like there's never been a utopia.
I don't know about that.
Well, if it was utopian, where is it? Right? Like
Probably
here's
destroyed. Probably destroyed by white people or
well
imperialists or colonialists or.
when you say you don't know about that, what do you mean?
I
Like you
mean
gotta
that there are. I mean that there are places where people have lived for certain amounts of time where there was an abundance of food, there was equality between the sexes, and there was a general um, spirit of like sharing and like being at peace, um, which might be described as a utopia.
uh history doesn't. History gives us the examples that you were talking about and they don't describe it as utopia.
Well, I mean, history is generally written by the quote unquote winners, or generally, I mean, our history is given to us from the white man's perspective. For instance, the history of like the black man starts with slavery.
Yeah, but you're talking about a limited perspective of history. Like history isn't just confined to what white America tells us history is.
So you're saying in all of history, east, west, north, south, um, pygmies, uh, Wall Street, you're saying in all of varied history, we haven't seen anything described as a utopia?
I'm saying that we've seen what you described and it has not been called utopia. Like
By
there's no book,
by anyone.
right, by anyone.
In
There isn't.
your study of history is that wide?
Just in my study of history, which I'm just ish. I'm not a historian or anything. I've just never come across. I've studied ancient history, Sumerian culture, and that doesn't make me it doesn't make me a scholar on history. The things that I've studied are very specific, but I've never come across the word utopian associated with any society.
What about
Though I have
Eden?
heard, Eden wasn't really a society, right? And
Well, no, no, no.
in
I
many
was just
cases, Eden is fictional, and for a lot of people.
well. That's not what I was saying. I was going to say,
Okay.
what about this word or that word or that word? In other words, I'm saying, is it possible that these other histories or these other perspectives use a different word besides
Well,
utopia?
well, let's throw some synonyms at me.
Okay, I mean those were some of the synonyms: Eden, heaven. I mean, probably a bunch of words.
So heaven has, from my knowledge, has never been used to describe a society. The closest thing that I could even think of is society. There was a society, and I can't remember what it was called. It was a culture that had no words. They'd never had a violent act, and they had no words no negative words.
Okay.
But the first major description of utopia, the first major description is imagined.
And what where does this come from?
I'm just reading the definition. A utopia is an imagined community or society that possesses highly desirable or nearly perfect qualities for its citizens.
Okay, let's dial it back for a second, and let's just assume that we've gotten off on the wrong premise and that it doesn't require a utopia to abolish the police or even prisons, but all it requires is a different vision.
Well, I wasn't applying the concept of utopia to abolishing the police. I was applying it to people's willingness to uphold a social contract without police.
Okay.
Because I'm cynical. Like, people are people. So we would have to get to a point where all people were happy enough not to, one, commit crime, two, for the strong not to just take from the weak.
But that's not what the abolition movement is seeking. Abolition.
I know. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about. See, here's the thing. When we don't know, right? Remember when you said there's questions that they have to ask? We don't know what a society that does not have police, we don't know what that is going to be contingent upon. We just don't know. So then everything is on the table for speculation because we just don't know what it's going to be contingent upon. What type of society we have to become to be able to thrive without something that enforces the laws.
So, yeah, the keyword something. So first of all, I don't want to assume. It's without. I don't want to assume that no society has done this, and B, police forces haven't always existed. So I think.
Well, when you say police forces haven't always existed, society hasn't always existed the same way either, right? Like, we live in the 21st century. Certainly isn't the same in the 1800s, where there was a lot of lawlessness. Especially, so if you go back to the 1400s when we were 13 colonies, right? Like, everywhere else was lawless.
Everywhere else where?
In the United States. Well, in what would become the United States. And I'm not talking about, like, well, yeah, it was kind of lawless. Whatever lawless meant for that time period. Whatever that meant. Because obviously it doesn't mean the same as it does today. Whatever it meant for that particular time period and for the cultures and the people, I remember the show Deadwood. Those people who were out there in Missouri, like, they didn't have real law.
Right. No, I gotcha. And that's there's a whole law versus freedom conversation that we can get into. But getting back to what the abolition movement is seeking, there already are examples of ways to seek justice without using the prison system. There's a word for it. I think it begins with an R. There's words for it where, like, families, I think they call it restorative justice, but there's a system, and some places, are more dependent on the system. Maybe in, like, some of the Scandinavian countries that rely on prisons less than even the prison system that they do have. They call them, like, open prisons or open jails, where you're, like, really kind of free to come and go as you please, which seems ridiculous to us because we're just not used to that kind of mindset. But there are other examples of other types of justice, but we've just been in this system for so long that we can't imagine anything else. which to me is kind of sad because at the very least, our imagination should be free if we're not going to be. But we can't even imagine anything else.
Well, you got to look at things like cause and effect, right? Like I imagined before we had our social contract and the laws that uphold it and the systems that were put in play, we couldn't imagine such a state. You see what I'm saying?
You mean such a state as in like just the way that life is right now, or
Right. With our laws in play, with our justice system, with police, I imagine prior to that being put into these things being implemented, we couldn't imagine, you know, if I put myself in the shoes of someone in the 15 or 1600s or what have you, I'm sure we couldn't imagine society as it is today.
probably not? But there have been wise people throughout history who have written caveats into the law because they knew it would be difficult to imagine where things would go, and they would want people to be able to change according to the needs of the time or according to our according to our want to like make things better. So in other words, you write this beautifully
So
written constitution, and you have a lot of faith in it, and you have the brightest people in the room, across the country or maybe even across the world help you write this beautiful constitution, but you still decide to write into it the ability to amend it because you realize
it
that
has to be organic.
at some point things are not going to be the same.
Right. Well, it has to be organic. It's not static. It
Right.
has to be organic in order to change with the times.
Right. So an abolitionist would tell you that we have been artificially sticking to this very outdated form of quote unquote justice, policing, prison that's doing us a lot of harm, and that it's specifically, I mean, even the John Olivers of the world, and even you know people who are not considered progressive at all will tell you that the modern day policing system, came out of the slave catching system, and so it's specifically not designed to be good to Black people, and so that we need to find creative ways to make major adjustments. And the reason for and you said,
Yeah,
you've
but
seen
now
it.
you're talking about something else, though, and I don't disagree. When you say we need to find creative ways to make major adjustments, for sure, but that's not the same as the eventual, you know, abolishing of law enforcement.
Well, the word eventual is so, I don't know why that is a hang up. I mean,
No,
eventual
it's
could,
not a hang up. It's just not the same.
yeah, but eventual could mean 2,000 years from now. I mean,
Yeah, no, I'm not. Eventual isn't a hang up to me. I'm not hung on that. I'm just saying that the eventual abolition is not the same as finding creative ways. That's all I'm. You're finding creative ways to adjust is not the same as the eventual abolition of, even if it's 10,000 years from now. And again, I don't know how, and it's not far fetched for me to say that it's beyond my imagination how we legislate for 2,000 years from now.
I mean, you're a writer, right? You like nonfiction. Sorry, science fiction.
Hmm.
Let's just go far to the future. Like, no matter how cynical you think you are, why can't you imagine a world far into the future where the idea of policing is just outdated.
I can. But what I can't imagine is that it's outdated because people 2,000 years prior put that ball into motion. 2,000 years. So as a creative writer, do you know how? Listen, I once wrote on Facebook, in 50 years, everybody will be purple. And I was being sarcastic. But do you know how cultures and people change over the course of 2,000 years? Like we're not outside of just from an intellectual perspective concerned about what people were doing 2,000 years ago.
I mean, the whole Jesus thing and, you know, all that.
Outside of an intellectual, because people trivialize that. So from an intellectual or religious perspective, we're not concerned. The tools of 2,000 years ago don't affect today. Yes, we use certain things as examples, but our society, we're not driving cars because of what somebody did 2,000 years ago.
Whoa. Are you sure about that?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the wheel is one thing. The engine didn't get created until the 20th century.
When did the wheel get created?
I don't know. But nobody thought to put that on a car. Nobody thought. Think about it. Things had to happen in order for us to even get the car. The wheel being one of them. But things had to happen, and a lot of them happened in the 20th century. The 19th and the 20th century.
A lot of them did, but without the wheel.
The majority of them did. Yeah, but that's one component.
That's a huge component.
Well, no, because without the wheel, maybe we would be flying. Maybe cars wouldn't touch the ground. Like you're talking to a creative writer. So
well, if they wouldn't be cars, then would they?
Well, who knows? Why wouldn't we call them cars? Why not?
So
maybe we hover an inch off the ground.
The history, like the timeline of advancing in technology, like shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. So, like 2000 from 2000 BC to 0, or from 1000 BC to 1000 AD, that timeline creates a certain amount of technology, but then in the very next only 500 years, you shove in the same amount of technology, but then in only the very next 250 years, and it shrinks and shrinks and shrinks to where, you know, now we're moving at a speed so quickly.
Or we're not.
No, I mean, this is according to technological history. This is
yeah, but I'm thinking creatively because we don't have a bar to measure it against. We don't have another race or species to measure our advancement in technology against.
Well, we measure it against other times in history.
Right. But what I'm saying is, based upon that, right? So if we're measuring our technology against other times in history, but we're the only bar, how do we even know we're really advanced?
That's not what we're questioning. We're saying that
well, you have periods in history where you've had long periods where there were no advancements. And then you have periods where there were booms in advancement. Like the Renaissance, for instance. A whole period of just technological enlightenment. Then you have long periods where there's no advancement. And then for America, for instance, you take the 20th century, the latter half of the 19th century, going into the 20th century, and you have another boom in advancement where we just advanced rapidly. But dominoes had to fall into play. Like literally, we didn't understand. It wasn't like we planned for these advancements, right? We created this and realized that we could couple this creation with this creation, or this specific creation opens the door for this possibility that we never thought. And we didn't even create this for this thing.
Leaps.
Right, right. We didn't create it for this specific thing, but now that we have it, we realize like, here's an idea, or here's this can be used in this way. So while I don't disagree with you, and we have rapidly advanced, but it's been boom periods. Then there's been periods where we just, the railroad led, if you watch the documentary Captains of Industry, right? The railroad developed because this guy didn't want to use boats anymore. He just felt like there would be a faster way. So they started developing, and this was all, for him to, transport goods and transport people. And then that pushed the steel industry forward. And then that pushed the oil industry forward. And then when we discovered the so for us to have computer capacity, a CPU, we needed the assembly line. Well, the assembly line was only created to produce automobiles. But yet that creation, little did we know, could be used across industry. Not just for automobiles, but across all industry. There was a use for the assembly line. But in order to get to
this is all like I'm not this isn't like something that I've like come up with myself or made up. This is like a very like history, the history of the world or the history of technology like talks about this. And what you're saying actually agrees.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing.
Right. But I'm saying like we went from cars to planes to the moon in like a relatively short period of time, whereas in previous history, the time for us to go from one leap to the next took a lot longer. So
that also speaks to my point. People 2,000 years ago could not have imagined today's society.
Right. So you can't imagine 2,000 years from now society.
I can creatively, but yeah, that's what I was saying. And you were like, well, why is it so hard to imagine? Like, and I said to you, I can't imagine that we will affect the society that exists 2,000 years from now. Will be reference material.
We're always affecting. Like,
hold on, I didn't finish. Will be reference material. Certainly, our ideas may persist. For sure. Certainly, aspects of culture will persist, just like aspects of culture and ideas from 2,000 years ago still persist. For sure. And they may even impact on some level society 2,000 years from now. But do I think that what the changes we make now, the changes that we make now, will impact society 2,000 American society? I don't even know that there'll be in America.
I just threw out a random number. I mean, I could have said
no. I know, and I'm just sticking with that
100. I could have said 100 years or what have you. But if people in the future,
you did say 2,000, which is what that changes. That's the difference from 100 years. America may not be here 2,000 years from now.
If people 2,000 years from now think that they don't owe a lot of what they have to us, then I fear for them because they're suffering from arrogance. The same way that we should be looking at our philosophers and our advances from 2,000 years ago, and we should be studying what we got from them.
So I mean, on the one hand, I agree with you. On the other hand, again, it's easy to say, how do we know what type of society we're going to have into? Maybe they don't need to. Maybe they get so advanced that they could just travel back in the past in a time machine.
Who is they? They don't exist without us. We are creating.
Mike, but that's kind of beside the point. They is still they. When you say who is they, they would be.
They may not exist without us. We may fuck up this timeline, and there may not be anyone 2,000 years from now.
But the hypothetical was, can you imagine 2,000 years from now? So hypothetically, we have already concluded that there is a they.
the point that I was trying to make was that you were allowing your cynicism to stop you from like a possible outcome in the future. You were saying
Well,
you were too cynical to see people.
no, 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 no. I told you that I can agree that perhaps there isn't a need for police in 2,000 years from now based upon that random number. What I did say was I can't imagine that what we do today impacts 2,000 years from now. And we're speaking hypothetically. So since you appealed to the creative writer in me, the creative person in me, I then said to you, how do I know? Because we're like, you said they're arrogant if they don't rely on history. And I'm like, well, how do we know that in 2,000 years they don't have time machines and they can just jump back in the past? And and like, how do I know what type of existence that is going to be?
Even if they have time machines, they would have to have like stood on the shoulders of giants to get to where they are now. I
Or
mean,
they
any scientist
what
will
if
tell you that
what
like
if we make
that,
first contact in 500 years and we get all this information from aliens?
okay, so who was the first people to go to space?
What if they come here? That's what I mean. I'm throwing all these things at you because we're talking about the unknown.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that, in science and even in science fiction and even in history and all these different what do you call them? What do you call those things? In all these different studies, history always matters more than people imagine that it does. And kids in the present always think they're the shit, and they always think your boy Billy Joel made a whole song about it, just to like really get people thinking like we didn't start the fire.
Right.
It was always burning as the
Right.
world's been turning. And then he
Right.
goes back and then he shows you like all these things that really like made a huge impact, while like this person, probably a young person who's like chewing on his gum, staring out the window, like not listening to his teacher or whatever, thinks that like only today is the shit. But
Right. So what ultimately what we have to equally conclude is that the things that we do today could just cause us as Americans to just die out as well. Could easily, as well as it could cause us to prosper and blossom into the future. Like all societies, not everyone makes it. History has swallowed societies and cultures. Empires fall.
well, then that has a big impact on what happens in 2,000 years, because then we're
Mhm.
talking about, what are we talking about? Non-Americans in 2,000 years, or non-humans? And if we're
Not
talking
necessarily
about,
non-humans. Maybe America's not around.
well, that's a big change. That's a big, so now who steps up? Is it China? Is it Ghana? It's like, what is it? Like who starts like being the major force over the next 2,000 years, or is it more
Well,
egalitarian and
have
no
you
one's
ever
really?
considered actually kind of segueing how long can America persist as an empire?
Sure, I consider that,
When
as many historians have. Yeah,
history tells us that empires just don't, I mean, they collapse.
yeah, yeah. I've thought about that. Have you thought about who might be the next major world? You know, the country that's like the major world leader.
I haven't. It'd be interesting to kick around though.
I mean, some people say China. They're definitely growing in economy and just in the way, and they're already making moves like trying to take over Africa and stuff like that. So they're
Mm.
making parallel moves as far as being like, the leader and things. And we owe them a ton of money too. So they
Yeah,
could kind
we're
of make
not
sense.
we're not going to pay them.
And also they can make moves quicker than we can because they don't have the democracy that we do. So if they want to like
Right.
make moves, they can make moves. Could be China.
Yeah, I don't know. China's kind of been around for a long time. I don't discount them as a world power now.
Mhm.
You know, they are buying oil, competing with, you know, the top countries for oil.
Yeah. But who
Which,
knows, if they're too imperialistic, maybe their shit's gonna fall too. Maybe their people are gonna like revolt. Maybe it'll be like one of these who knows? Maybe it'll be like some kind of like South American country that's like a mix of like socialism and like has some kind of like democratic values or something where the people like feel where the people are like happy and content. Maybe it'll be somewhere in Africa. Maybe melanated people will like start being the leaders and try to lead in a more just way.
hmm.
A lot of these African countries keep telling African Americans like, if we want to go back, we can. They're like ready for us.
So I kind of want to get back though to the whole abolish thing, because I think we went into like H.G. Wells territory.
Yeah. Well, the parts that you and I agree with are the parts that are the most worth discussing. Is the fact that the police were not put in place to be social workers and to be like catching people's dogs and to be putting out fires and like all this other stuff that they've been tasked to do. And so they're not mental health workers and they're not all this other stuff. So by defunding them, we're also helping them focus on what they're supposed to be doing instead of having this wide scope of stuff that they're ill-equipped to do. You know, they're more likely to shoot a person suffering from mental illness than talk him or her down and get them the help they need. They're more likely to be like, this person's acting erratically and shoot them, especially if they're black, right? So we don't want them handling those situations,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we don't want to fund that.
I mean, I've seen that.
Oh yeah.
I've seen a video where a woman called the police because her son wasn't on his medication.
Mm-hmm. She
And he
wish
was
she
like,
hadn't done that.
yeah, because the police came and he had a screwdriver and they shot him.
Yep.
And
Yeah. So I mean, that's part of the whole defund movement is they're not equipped to do those things, so we shouldn't fund them to do those
right.
things.
And those that I'm with.
And in New York City, they're funded to the tune of almost $6 billion. Now, if that number wasn't enough already, I looked into it, and we're talking about more than education, more than mental health, more than social services, and more than like one or two other things combined. And now we're
Yeah,
talking
but there's ingredients there, right? Like there are people with power and with money who want a major police presence in the most important city in the world.
Yeah, and there are lots and lots of voters who are being organized and spoken to, and who are picking up phones like I did today and calling their council people and telling them to, cut the funding by $1 billion. And there are people who want to keep their jobs in office who are going to like do what their voters are going to do, especially if their voters are together and organized.
That's an idea.
Yeah, and I actually
I know that I've grown up in a world. I lived in a world where they occupied Wall Street because money talks.
mm-hmm. That's
talks.
one that is
That's another idea.
Yeah, and we need all the ideas, right? We're not just employing one idea. I mean, Malcolm talked about a few of these ideas, right? He talked about knowing your council people, getting involved in local politics, picking up that phone, writing letters, running your own, local politicians to get these
So
good people in office.
so here's the thing, right? And this is where cynical me comes into play. I always feel like these battles that we're fighting on paper are for the right reason, but for some reason I always feel like we're not focused on the actual enemy.
Okay.
So we can have all these hot topics that need to be dealt with, or hot button issues, or what have you,
Okay.
but like the enemy is the person with the finances, that 1% with the finances that moves and shakes the world.
Okay, let me pause this for 1 second. I'm just going to grab my drink. I'll be
Mhm.
back in 1 second. Okay, resuming. Okay, so, all right, so yeah, you're talking about a larger enemy with deep pockets.
Well, I was really thinking of those dystopic stories that, and it's not a original story. You've seen it over and over again, I'm sure, where you have rich people living in the sky and everybody else living on the ground.
Okay.
That's how I kind of perceive the enemy.
Okay.
Like they're really above all of these trivial politics. They're just above it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And we
Right.
never, the one time that I can recall in American history where we targeted that enemy was the Occupy movement.
How did we do that?
I mean, I didn't participate in the Occupy movement, but it was the whole Occupy Wall Street, the Occupy Wall Street movement and the whole target the rich, which I didn't participate because I thought the implementation was bad. Like the
Okay.
execution was poor.
Okay.
Personally, I just thought it was poor execution. Like if you're going to go to war with the 1%, you have to really be all in.
Okay.
And you have to be on your P's and Q's. You have to have a good strategy, and you have to be prepared to see it through to the end. Because
what does it mean going to war with a 1%?
Well, you were privy to the Occupy movement.
Right, but like to you, what does that mean? Is it just like standing, is it just like sitting in some square saying fuck the 1%?
Not to me. Not to me.
Okay.
I told you I thought the execution was poor.
So what would that look like? What would a good execution look like?
I don't know. I don't know. But it occurs to me, if that's the enemy, somebody should figure it out.
Well, I think we have, but it's not like an easy. It's not. It's not just like an easy discussion to have.
Right.
Right.
It's not.
It's like super multifaceted, and we actually addressed some of the things that the 1% affect. But to the average layperson, they weren't patient enough to wait around for those victories, right? For instance, some of the things we wanted in Occupy included free higher education, forgiving student loan debts, and a $15 an hour minimum wage, at least a much higher minimum wage. We ended up getting all of those things in New York State and in other states. Not in every single state by any means, definitely not all across the country. But in New York, after Bernie lost in 2016, we ended up getting free higher education, $15 an hour minimum wage, and paid family leave like back to back to back in about like a year after he lost. Those were like huge victories. But a lot of people didn't look back and say, oh, the reason that someone like Bernie was even popular or was even able to have a message that resonated was because of all that energy that came out of Occupy and because of all the demands that people made at Occupy. So like a lot of these victories that we have, or a lot of the standing up to the 1%, saying, you know, you guys want it all, you want the corporate welfare, you know, you want the tax breaks, you want all this stuff, and you don't want to contribute, and you want to, like, you know, destroy economies and all this stuff. A lot of people weren't making those connections.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing about looking at the enemy long term versus looking at a lot of these goals and victories that we want in the meantime as like, yeah, the 1%'s a big problem, but in the meantime, you know, we gotta eat, we gotta work, we gotta like have all these other victories that we're fighting for. Some people have reduced messages to like one simple message to their detriment. Some of those people were like definitely Bernie supporters, the kind of people who every answer of theirs was take, you know, money out of politics. And that's like, okay, not every single answer is take money out of politics. Like, you know, police just shot my son. Oh, take money out of politics. Like, you know, there's got to be more to it than that. But yeah, I think people recognize that enemy, and like to really tell it. That's why you're seeing more of the socialists coming around, and more people not afraid to use the word socialism. And you know, Bernie started it with the democratic socialist thing, but you know, other people are like, I'm a straight socialist. Don't even soften it with the word democratic, because they realize who the true enemy is, and that's the 1%, and that's people who would like, you know, hold on to all of this money to the detriment of all those other programs that we talked about.
Well, yeah, because once you get to that level, right, you affect the government of countries.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it is said that the most profitable business on earth is war profiteering.
Yeah.
Who profits? Clearly, it would be that percentage.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
And that's the real 1%.
Right. Right.
A lot of people think that they're the 1%. They're not even close.
Yeah, you don't affect the governance of countries. You got a lot of money, but you can't affect, you know, how countries are governed, because you're not at that level. You're just not at that level. Yeah, you got a lot of money. Yeah, you're well known. Yeah, you may have billions, but that doesn't even really put you in the real 1%.
Well, I think by the time you have billions, you're definitely in the 1%. But I know what you mean as far as having that kind of power.
Right.
I mean, even a lot of these millionaires think that they're in the 1%.
Yeah, and you're not. Like, you're not. And I think there's a confusion there, right? Because a lot of people just see money as the 1%.
I mean, technically it is, but, you know.
Well, let me clarify, because I'm talking about power.
Right.
You know, real power.
Right.
You know,
Well,
power.
and I was wrong, by the
affect.
way.
Say again.
Oh, I was wrong, by the way, what I just said about millionaires not being in the top 1% of earners. It's actually anyone with at least $421,926. So anyone just over 420,000 is in the top 1% in the U.S.
Really? That's a lot of people in the 1%.
Well, that's not as many as we would think. I mean, it is a lot. It is a lot, but we have a lot of people. But we got a ton of people who are not.
Less than $1 million put you in the 1%.
The top 1% of earners, at least as of last year.
Okay. Of earners.
Oh,
Okay.
wait. Oh, you're talking about not earners, but of how much you're actually worth.
Right. Wealth.
Yeah, that's a good question. Wow, and in some states, it's much lower.
Because that makes sense. If you're talking about earners, that does make sense. Like that's 421,000. That makes sense. That I would imagine. I can't imagine. I don't know anyone who makes 421,000 a year.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, I know of people, I'm sure, actors and what have you, any actor that gets 20 million for a film. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, just an average, not average, but someone who's, not an actor or not famous or anything like that, or, you just make 421K a year. Yeah, I guess that is pretty rare.
Okay, so yeah, if we want to talk about actual wealth, now it goes to the world, not just the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
The world's richest 1%, according to the Credit Suisse Global Wealth Report, those with more than $1 million. There you go.
More than $1 million?
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of people.
Own 44% of the world's wealth.
That's a lot of people. There are a lot of millionaires.
Well, a lot is a relative term, right?
Yeah, but I mean, you can surmise that there are a lot of people with at least $1 million.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But think about what 1% means. Like, you're in a room with 100, there's only going to be one of them.
Yeah, I know. We're talking, total population.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of people in just the United States with at least $1 million.
Yeah. Most of them live in, certain neighborhoods away from the riffraff.
Every time you turn on the TV, if you watch one channel all day, you watch HBO from sun up to sundown, you're going to see a few hundred people with $1 million. Maybe more. You see what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, a few hundred. That's not a lot.
Yeah. Well, that is a lot. I guess it's perspective, right? Like it's not a lot, but that's just one channel.
Oh, keep in mind, a lot of these secondary actors aren't making anywhere close to what the big ones are making.
No, I agree. No argument. But so in the entertainment field in the United States, if you work regularly, it doesn't take you long to accrue $1 million. You will eventually accrue $1 million. Just from regular work in the entertainment industry. even secondary actors, if they're just stacking their paper, maybe they don't have it liquid, but maybe it has they've $1 million has went through their hands throughout their career. It just doesn't take a lot. You know, you do a film, you do a couple films, even if you're a low level actor and you make a couple $100,000, you do 2 or 3 of those and you're sitting on $1 million. Without having these big movie contracts. You know, the average person in the music business, if they're working, if they're successful, they've seen $1 million.
Right. Well, in order for it to be well, they have to still have it in some asset.
Yeah, it has to be liquid or something they can touch.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get it. But you're talking a lot of these people just invest in, you know, $500,000 houses. You know, in many cases they have 2 or 3 of them. It's crazy. When you look at it in that perspective, it's like, oh, there's, and you're right, a lot is relative. And it certainly is interchangeable depending on what you want to apply it to, right? Like, you know, you can say, for the purposes of argument, that there aren't a lot of millionaires, and you wouldn't be wrong. You know what I mean? And then for the purposes of argument, depending on the argument, you can say that there are, and you wouldn't be wrong.
Yeah.
I need every one of these millionaires to just give me $1. Hook a brother up. Just give me $10. It ain't gonna hurt you. Put it in a GoFundMe. I told somebody the other day, and she was appalled. And I was, you know how I do. Like, I'll be joking, but I'll sell it like I'm serious.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yo, I think I'm gonna start a GoFundMe to get a giant size Xmen comic. It costs $6,000. And she goes, that's horrible. Why would you do that? And I'm like, because I feel like I deserve giant size Xmen. I'm a good person. You know what I mean? I'd like to just start a GoFundMe and just be totally honest and be like, listen, I need a high grade copy of giant size Xmen #1, 9.6 or better. This is how much it costs. And I'm starting to GoFundMe for it. And I'm like, do you think people would support it? She's like, probably not. And I'm like, why not? She goes, because that's a horrible reason to start a GoFundMe. I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, do you understand the dumb reasons why people just give money away? And she's like, no, you should save that for something that you really need. And I'm like, what is this like? Are you like hitting me with the moral argument? Like, I don't know. What do you think about that? And I'm not going to start a GoFundMe to get giant size Xmen. But if I were to do that, would I be wrong?
No, hell no. Not only would you not be wrong, but I would have liked to have been there to mess with this woman who was like trying to give you shit about this.
Carrie. She was like, no, don't you dare. And I'm like, what do you mean? Don't I dare?
Not only
like, that's horrible.
Not only would I support you, but I would also get like a whole room of people to agree why they should support you over like supporting, you know, like some starving children.
Are you? Yo, you're crazy. You sound like me right now.
In the end, I would just be like, psych, but I would take them through this whole, like, you know, the
that's why I said you sound like me right now.
What are the people that like
you'd rather give 99 cents a day to some kid with flies on his stomach in a third world country?
You know that the warlords are just going to take this money anyway. Like, you know that we have enough money to supply food to like every hungry person in the world right now. We do. We have enough food. It's more about distribution, and it's more about all these other issues why they're not getting it. So I'm like, you might as well save your money and, give it to Ish so he can inspire the world with his comics.
Yep. I was telling her, I'm like, I'm that bad. It's literally one book. You know how much money I spend on books? This is one that help me out.
You're gonna be like, then what we're gonna do is we're gonna save your money. Instead of giving it to these kids who are hungry, we're gonna prevent the circumstances that get them hungry in the first place. And we're gonna learn to do that instead of just throwing your money at a problem thinking that it'll help.
Well, I did say that if I started a GoFundMe to get that particular book, any money over the cost of the book, I would donate
That's excellent.
to like programs for kids, because I think reading is fundamental and I think it's very important. I would donate it to like programs for reading and like we talked about the other day. I have a problem with the fact that many kids get their only meals from school.
Yeah.
So I'd look to take anything that over the top after the cost of the book and put it to good use as far as helping kids out, preferably reading or eating.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I was
But
gonna say because they're both important, but eating is probably more important than reading.
Yeah, but one of the things that I always, if I ever had my own comic shop, I'd have like weekly reading groups. You know what I mean? And I'd always have like I tell Hunt, because we always talk about, doing a comic shop, and I'd be like, yo, I want to have these like workshops, where parents can drop their kids off or teenagers can come in, and I'd have an area of comics that you could read.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you could just read, and I'd like to, give a comic away to everyone that's in the reading group every week, and things like that, just to kind of encourage reading. And I think that comics are a great medium for I think it's the best medium actually to encourage kids to read. I don't think there's a better medium than comic books to encourage children to read.
What age?
All children of all ages. I don't think
Okay.
there's a better medium, period. I just don't think there's a better medium. The reason why is because it's visual. In many cases, the characters are cool. And in all cases, you're reading so I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, I would go to the dictionary of my own on my own, because my favorite characters were using words and I didn't know the meaning of them.
Okay.
So I was always in the dictionary.
Okay.
Because in many cases, it's a higher reading level. Like there's a misconception, right? Like comics aren't dumbed down.
And you're just talking about regular comics, not even the what's the longer version? Comics called
Graphic novels and
yeah,
such.
not even yeah.
No, I'm just talking regular comics.
Okay.
I grew up as a kid when I was 8 reading Xmen, which is a social commentary on civil rights. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And these people weren't dumbing these stories down because kids were reading them, because these are writers, they're creators. Like they want to tell their stories and they want to tell good stories. So they're not going to dumb them down. They're just going to tell the story. So there's a level of education that comes from that, right? Because you're reading, right? If you had an 8-year-old kid, and you throw them a stack of comic books, you're going to the odds of you creating a reader are high because it's visual, right? There's cool characters, so the odds of you creating someone who just wants to read on their own, very high.
Smart. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I always tell people, like, get your kids some comics. If you wanna encourage them to read more, just get them comic books. Oh, but they're no, listen. They're going to be reading. Once they start reading comic books, they'll be reading at a higher level than their grade. The moment they start reading the books. they're immediately going to be reading at a higher level than their grade level, and they're going to enjoy it because it's Spider-Man saying it.
And so
You understand what I'm saying?
you said kids of all levels, so you mean all the way up through 17?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely start them early. Start them early. You know what I mean? Like I started reading comics when I was 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And then from there it was, I'm reading Greek mythology, and I was reading, when in elementary school I read every book on the shelf in every grade I was in. But it was, comics were the medium. I mean, my mom always encouraged reading. So before I was reading comic books, like that was a big thing in my household, was reading. We've had this conversation before. Then I discovered comic books, and it was like all bets are off. And I've always tell people, listen, get your kids some comics. Just get them some comics. If that's, if you want to, help to facilitate reading in your household, and especially in lower income communities or minority communities, right? Because a lot of cases the kids that are going to excel academically are the kids that, not in all cases, just in a lot of cases, are the kids that have access to more words.
Oh, hey, sorry. Something I just want to interject really quick.
Mm-hmm.
And keep in mind, this is for 2013. Of the 155,740 actors, directors, and producers included in the survey by the Department of Labor report, the average person made $89,000 in 2013 at the rate of $42.80 an hour.
Okay.
So yeah, all around the actors are not the pool you probably want to be looking at.
Okay. Good to know. I stand corrected. But yeah, so the kid that benefits academically early on is the kid that just has access or is exposed to more words.
Right.
Be it, spoken, hearing more words, a broader vocabulary spoken from their parents or the people around them,
Mm-hmm.
or, reading. So a lot of times parents aren't equipped with, a broad vocabulary. My mom was, but I just had my mom.
Right.
It wasn't like I was listening to my mom speak to my dad.
Right.
My mom just happened to be, reading was her thing.
Okay.
It's something
and so
I tell
she
people.
encouraged you to do the same?
Yeah, but not just verbally, like in action, right? I often tell people when I remember my friend Celia, when she had her first kid, I bought her like a set of Dr. Seuss books. And she was like, well, they're not going to be able to read anytime soon. And I'm like, yeah. I said, but what you want to do is just put a bookshelf in their room and put books on the shelf. And have a bookshelf in your house and put books on the shelf. This is encouraging through action.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
you want to make sure that there are books visible and available, whether they can read them or not. Mind you, this is what I learned from my mother's actions, because there were books all over my house growing up. There were always books, bookshelves with books. I can't count how many times I pulled a book off a shelf until one day I could read it. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then, with that formula, I added comic books. So then I tell people, also get your kids comic books. If you need suggestions, I can give you suggestions of what books are good, for your kids. But this will increase their reading level. But not only does it increase their reading level, it gives them a desire to read.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like it
Uh-huh.
actually makes them want to read, and they're reading at a higher level. So I think that I think it's important. It's visual. It's, a lot of times, you know, it builds character, because comic books are more often than not social commentary.
And do you have parents coming into the shop?
Say again?
Do you have parents that like end up coming into the shop that you have these discussions with, or
I don't have a shop.
oh, or when you go to your friend's shop or whatever?
Yeah.
You're not like there. You're not like there helping out or working
I
on
mean,
the things.
I've been there when parents have come in with their kids. When I go to Collectors Inn,
Oh,
parents will
okay.
come in with their kids.
Okay.
They're usually coming in to buy, like this one guy. He's usually out there with his son every Wednesday morning when, with me, when Collectors Inn opens up at 10. But
Mhm.
he's usually there to buy comics for himself.
Okay.
But then I've been there where like parents have come in to buy like those tabletop game cards, like Magic the Gathering and the such, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon cards for their kids.
Mhm.
But I would suggest, if you're a parent and you're like, I can't imagine going to a comic book store with my kid to get comics for myself and not encouraging my kid to pick out a comic.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to encourage you to pick out a comic.
Yeah.
Pick out something you may think is cool. If not, I'll suggest something that you may think is cool. You see what I'm saying? And every time we go to the comic book store, I get my stuff, you get your book. So yeah, if I were to do a GoFundMe, which I'm not, but if I were, I would definitely take any remaining money and try to figure out a way to put it towards that endeavor, something that helps, provides a means for children to read, even if it's just buying a bunch of books and giving them to some kids at like the hospital or something.
Yeah, that sounds. Do they have something called Comics for Kids? That sounds like a good idea. Comics for
Yeah, I think
Kids.
so.
Okay.
I don't know that they have that. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
I definitely think it's a good idea. I've given, boxes of comics to kids. Boxes, actually, to kids. Long boxes. Stuff I didn't want. Not just gonna throw it away. You know what I mean?
Right.
Probably not gonna sell it on eBay or anything. So I just, someone has a son or a daughter who's interested in comics. A couple years ago, as my wife's friend Delisa, I gave her son, I don't know, a couple long boxes, just stuff that I was taking up space and I didn't need. And I think one of the boxes had fell and the books kind of got damaged. Just gave them to him. Stuff like that. But yeah, she was really going in on me, not to have segued from that. She was going in. She's like, "No, that's horrible." And I'm like, "What do you mean that's horrible?" Seriously though, I'm thinking I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to pay for the book myself. But
Yeah.
I'm thinking, why is it so bad? Like, you know, the only
Well,
stupid question is the one you don't ask, right?
well, it
So
makes me laugh because it sounds like there's some sacred, energy that's been attached to GoFundMe. And
that's what I
it's
was
like
telling her.
it's just a
That's what I did.
it's just a platform.
Yeah, that's what I said. I'm like, yo, you make it seem like there's like a moral attachment to GoFundMe.
Yeah.
She's like, you need to save that for something that you really need. I'm like, I really need this comic book. Like, what are you talking about?
Well, also, it sounds like she's under the impression that everybody gets one. You know, like you get one GoFundMe in this life, and
Yeah,
once you use it, you're done. Like, oh damn it, why did I use it on comic books when I could have used it for a kidney later on? Or it's like, oh, you shouldn't have used that GoFundMe.
listen, I was telling her, I said, you would be surprised what people throw their money away on.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not rich, and I'm talking about accumulating the funds to buy a $6,000 comic book. of my own accord. So, you know, and I'm not rich, and many people, I had a friend when I was thinking about buying it, and I asked people because I kind of felt guilty, and I asked people what they thought, and my friend messaged me and was like, I shouldn't buy it.
Okay.
And I was like, why not? And she was like, because it's a lot of money, and during this pandemic, nobody should be spending that much money unless the roof is on fire.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh, are you saying we shouldn't be spending money? Like that I didn't understand, because it occurs to me that we should be spending money to kind of help our economy recover.
Yeah, get the economy back.
Yeah.
Get the economy back. That's very interesting. What was your motivation for asking people about this? I almost feel like you were kind of like messing with these people.
No, I felt guilty.
Okay.
I had gotten a stimulus check that I didn't need.
I see.
And I recognized, I was just cognizant of all of the people who are kind of suffering and going through hard times.
Yeah.
And here I am thinking about buying a $6,000 comic book.
Okay.
So I felt some type of way.
You got your taxes back and everything?
Yeah, but I never see my taxes because, you know, my wife absorbs all of that.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I just kind of felt some type of way when I'd gotten the stimulus check, and I'm like, man, I kind of felt, I was feeling bad because like people are going through things.
You know what you should do?
What's that?
Take the amount that was on your stimulus check and write me a check.
Write you a check?
Yeah. It'll make you feel better.
Well, I tried to figure out ways not to make myself feel better, because I got a lot of good feedback when I posed the question, right? So a lot of people saying like, Ish, you're not selfish, just get the book. Like anyone who's been watching me build my Uncanny run,
right?
This is something that I've really been doing and I've worked hard at for a long time. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I'm not rich, you know what I mean? I actually, have to work hard to get the books that I need. And, what was me, like, who wants to hear about the problems with your yacht, right? But like, I'm not rich, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so it's not easy for me as it is for other people, because one, these books cost a lot of money. Two, it's just a hobby, right? So it's like, but so I said to my friend when she was like, don't get it. And I was like, well, it's kind of important to me, not just for me because it's a hobby, but like, I want to leave, like my run is like a historic run. Like, it's a great run. It's great. It's immaculate. It's probably more complete than your average run, because I'm super meticulous about having, things that other people just wouldn't have or put into the run. So my run is really, it's a high-end Uncanny Xmen run.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I have, variant covers and second prints, and, I go out of my way to find, books that you can only get with like board games, and you understand what I'm saying? Like, so it's not just a straight Uncanny run. It's an Uncanny run with like all the bells and whistles, so to speak. And in many cases, at least I'd say a quarter of the run is historic. It's tantamount to art. And so it's important for me, because as a Black person in America, we haven't really had the opportunity until, recently, to accrue real wealth that we can leave to the next generation. You see what I'm saying? So for me, I talked to my friend Anthony Hunt. He's Italian, and he's putting together the complete run of Amazing Spider-Man, which is a hard run to put together because many of those books on the lower end are, well over $1,000 a piece. But he's, this is a white guy, he's Italian. He's putting together this run so he can leave it to his son. So from that perspective in my head, like, I own a house so that I can leave it to my daughter.
Right, right.
Not because I want to, own a house. Not that I don't want to own a house, but my main goal with purchasing a house was so that I can start accruing things to leave to my daughter, to leave to the next generation, things of real wealth, real value. Giant size Xmen #1 to me is a Picasso. You see what I'm saying? Like it's
Yeah.
a painting. It's what someone who doesn't look like me would acquire to leave for their future generations. And that's what I was explaining to my friend when she was like, don't buy it. And I explained to her, I said, listen, this is what it means to me. Because she was like, I just don't understand how something like that, she said she thought the value was disposable, was temporal and disposable value.
Now,
And
when you describe that as a Picasso, is it everything from just like the historical value of like that particular like issue and where it falls in place, or is it also like the beauty of the cover, or also like how well that particular issue was written? Is it like everything? Does
so for
everything
that particular issue, there are a lot of factors that make it, to me, a Picasso. One, the cover is iconic. It is an iconic cover. Two, it marks an important and iconic period in X-Men history that, like, it's very important, right? The X-Men just went from being regular X-Men to being international, like this multicultural team of X-Men that would really make it a social commentary on civil rights.
Okay.
Like it went from being, 5 white characters to being like, it's the first appearance of Storm.
Okay.
It's the first appearance of Colossus. It's the first appearance of Nightcrawler. It's the first appearance of Thunderbird. So right there you have a German, a Native American, an African, and a Russian. It's the first appearance of Sunfire. No, it's not the first appearance of Sunfire. So they refer to as the international X-Men, but it's because they come from all over the world. But it's the first appearance of that team, which would become the most popular iteration of X-Men that directly plays into the social commentary of civil rights.
Okay.
And what I feel about Storm. I think she's, the most important character in the history of comics not named Superman.
Right. And speaking of which, my friend had said something about he wishes that they would like maybe do a show that had like the same budget as, say, a Game of Thrones or something like that.
Yeah, I read that comment.
Yeah.
I read that.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. I'm not opposed to that idea at all.
And did you watch The Mandalorian?
I did.
Okay. As far as like I guess the budget of that compared to most TV shows, I guess I would think of, like he said, Game of Thrones, but in my head I was thinking more like I would compare it to Mandalorian just because it's in the same.
Well, Game of Thrones had a bigger budget though.
Oh, I see. Okay.
At one point in time, they were like at least $1 million an episode.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, they had dragons.
Do you know what the Mandalorian budget was?
No, I can't imagine it was that though. I mean, Game of Thrones had dragons. Like okay. it was, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like they at one point in time, it was just they had the biggest budget on TV.
I see.
And I'm not saying every episode, but by that last season, it was like $1 million an episode. I mean, they had dragons. 50 Cent used to say it all the time. He'd be like,
"Wait a minute, $1 million an episode?"
Yeah, an episode.
Wasn't Seinfeld getting $1 million?
No, he was getting paid. Yeah, that was the contract he negotiated. But they were putting $1 million into the production of that show per episode. Like they didn't put $1 million.
You're saying not including what they paid the actors?
Right, not including what they paid the actors.
Oh, I see.
Like
Okay.
for the production of the show, where it didn't cost $1 million to produce Seinfeld. They paid Seinfeld $1 million, but that show didn't cost $1 million. If they spent $1 million to produce that show, they
Oh, I
they
guess.
got
Okay,
robbed.
I guess in my No, I guess I was confused. I guess in my head, when I think about how much it costs to run a show, you got to include how much it costs to pay the actors.
Oh no, I'm just speaking about production value.
Okay. Okay.
Special effects and
I see.
locations and quality of costumes and often things like that.
Okay.
They at one point they were spending $1 million a show. You know what I mean? 50 Cent used to talk about it all the time when compared to Power. He's like, Power is the best, show on cable television that isn't Game of Thrones. And he was like, and the only reason why is because of the money they spend. He even jokes and says they got dragons. It costs money when you got 3 dragons flying around. You know what I mean? that don't look whack. You know what I mean? That actually look like Smaug from The Hobbit. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, So he was, he joked about that all the time. The only reason why Power built stars pretty much, but he wasn't spending nearly $1 million a show.
Right.
And there's nothing about Power that would merit you spending $1 million.
Right.
Like why would you need to spend $1 million to put Power out?
Right.
Like it's not like the buildings fly. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
it's not like spaceships are landing. Same with the Mandalorian. I could look at the Mandalorian and I could clearly be wrong. You could probably look it up and I could be wrong. But I can look at the Mandalorian and tell you they're not spending $1 million on it.
Right. Well, there's ships, not huge ships, but there's ships and
Yeah, but that's either CGI or it's just really good special effects. Like they're either on location in one area or they're on closed sets. And a lot of times, anytime they're inside, it could always be the same set, just different decorations on that set.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Mandalorian budget is 100. Mandalorian cost around 100 million to make.
The whole series.
At 8 episodes in length, that would put
100 million
episodes at 8 episodes in length. That would put each episode's cost at around 12.5 million.
That's a lot.
Yeah, but if it's their productions, it's the best. I mean, I've never seen production like this for a show.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's more than I can't imagine why it cost 12.5 million.
I would go back and watch the show.
I watched it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't imagine why it would. I just can't imagine why it would cost 12.5 million for the show.
But they got to be including. I don't think that they're not including actors and stuff. I think when they say that's how much it costs per episode, they mean per episode. So they've got some actors in there with some chops. So I'm sure they cost.
I wonder how they get a return on that.
That's a good question.
I don't know how that works, but I wonder how they get a return on that.
Well, they're doing some toys, probably for the cute little Yoda. That's gonna probably return pretty big. That's probably why they put that.
Yeah, but that's you're not gonna mix that. You're not gonna call that profit. That's a different market, right? So you're spending money to make those toys. So that's a totally different lane. Like you're not gonna say, well, we got our money back for spending on this show because of toy sales. Like I'm sure they got their money back. I just never know how that works. It won't come from, say, the other merchandise, like merchandising. That's
merch is huge. Merch is huge, though.
But it's a completely different business. Meaning, so George Lucas doesn't count the money he makes from Star Wars toys as profit from the Star Wars movie. Right? He puts the movie out in theaters based upon how the movie does in theaters is where he looks at his profit margin. Then he licenses or starts another business for merchandising, so that I'm not mixing those monies. I want to profit off of the toys based on the strength of the movie, but I'm not going to include the toy profit as the net profit or gross profit for my film.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's kind of like the best way for me to describe it is like a wrestling event, right? So a wrestling event, you have what's called the gate, which you make at the door. That's how you justify paying all your wrestlers and what your profit is, what you make at the door. Merchandising, you have different books for that, right?
Yeah.
Because while they're here, we want to sell this many t-shirts. You understand what I'm saying? Or this many hats or sunglasses or, giant hands that you put over your hand. You understand what I'm saying? That's a totally different revenue stream. So we're not going to mix the two. Kind of like when we do our thing, which I'm not going to talk about because we're on, I'm not really going to talk about it.
Yes.
Anything that we branch off from the specific line that we're doing
I got you.
Is going to be a different, you understand what I'm saying?
No, I got you. I mean, George Lucas is just a filthy rich bastard either way. But
well, yeah, he got $4 billion for the rights to Star Wars. I would love to write something and somebody want to give me $4 million for the entire universe. And don't get me wrong.
You said billion?
Yeah, 4 billion.
Yeah. Oh, so by the way, the Game of Thrones, the final season. Wait, the Game of Thrones, they had their final season already, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The final season cost $15 million an episode, or $90 million for the 6th episode season.
Okay. Yeah, Game of Thrones was the highest budgeted show on TV.
Yeah.
15 mil, man.
Yeah, so these guys are going up and up.
Oh boy, who plays the Mandalorian made money.
Oh, they're going up and up. I mean, the Falcon.
Well, he was in Game of Thrones.
Okay. Which one was he?
He was Oberyn Martell.
I forget who that is.
Have you seen Game of Thrones?
Yeah, I just forgot who that was.
He was the one who got his head crushed by the mountain in single combat.
Oh, okay.
He was beating the mountain, like whooping his butt.
Yeah.
And the mountain grabbed his foot, pulled him to the ground, and crushed his head.
Wait, was this at the end, or no? This was.
Yeah, it was the last episode of the season.
Oh, okay.
Not season 8, but like season 4 or 5.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so Hawkeye's the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, WandaVision, and Hawkeye are each going to cost $25 million an episode.
An episode?
So, with 6 to 8 episodes in each series.
I didn't even know Hawkeye was still coming out. There's rumors that it's not.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because of what happened with Jeremy Renner and the whole. I don't know. I don't want to. I could be wrong, but I know he was in some sort of trouble with like domestic situation. Really? Yeah, so there were talks about pulling the show.
Oh well, yeah. This article came out in October, so could be.
Yeah, I mean that they've been talking about it since before October, so maybe they're still going full steam ahead with it. I hadn't really checked on it. I'm not really. I'll probably watch it, but I'm not excited about a Hawkeye show.
Yeah.
I mean,
I kind of felt the same way about what's her name coming out, the Russian woman.
Black Widow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're not talking about popular characters in the comic books. Right. However, Captain America wasn't a popular comic. Like it wasn't flying off the shelves. And Winter Soldier is like the best Marvel movie.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's true. I think that Black Widow has Winter Soldier potential. I mean, the formula is simple. It's a simple formula. If you stick to what's been done, you have a potential hit on your hands because it's easy. You know, you do Jason Bourne or you do any of these movies with like dope women spy espionage, like Salt or Anna, or you know what I mean? Hannah,
Maybe
like any of these dope films that have
maybe that's
already.
why I'm not excited, because it feels like something I've seen before.
But they're always pretty dope, though. They're always pretty dope.
Yeah, I guess it's just like, how many times can you see the same thing?
Yeah, true. Well, this has a different spin on it though, because there will be like supervillains in it, right?
True.
As opposed to just, you know, other espionage agents.
Yeah, that's
Kinda,
true.
you know, there will be, you know, Taskmaster's going to be in it. And he's a dope supervillain. I don't like his costume, but he's like one of my favorite villains. He's so dope. You know what I mean? He's like super dope, you know, and so having him in the film, I mean, it was a good pick to choose Taskmaster as the enemy because he's dope. He's a very dope. I don't know if you know who Taskmaster is and what he's capable of.
No, he's got to be interesting if he's dope, even though you don't like his.
I don't like the costume they chose to go with for him. They chose to go with his newer costume, where it's just kind of like, nobody really liked his newer costume in comics. His older costume is really cool, but he has like a replica of Captain America's shield. He's got like Daredevil's Billy Club. So what his powers are, and he doesn't have any superpowers. He's a mercenary assassin.
Oh, I see.
But his skill set is he has photoreflexive memories. So all he has to do is watch you fight for 10 seconds and he knows your entire style.
Okay. But what if your style is, what if there's more to your style than it can be captured in 10 seconds?
That's never the case with him. Like his photoreflexive memory is so dope. Like he's so good. His photoreflexive memory is so good that just by watching your movement, he has enough foresight to ascertain everything you're capable. It doesn't mean he's going to be better than you. He'll just be as good as you.
Right. So there's never been a case of someone he couldn't ascertain just because their fighting style was so complicated, or because their fighting style switched up. Because like what if
once they switch it up and he observes it, he learns it.
Oh, I see.
He just has to observe it.
Okay. So
you see what I'm saying? So if they know, say they know 3 styles, and he only sees them do one, the moment they start doing the other style, and he observes it, he'll just pick it up.
So I get it. So in order to beat him, you're gonna have to switch up styles before 10 seconds,
or just be better than him.
Right.
Like Captain America's beating him.
Right.
You know, just because I master your style doesn't mean I'm a better practitioner.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
Sure. Or I might still be much stronger than you.
Right. Or faster.
Right.
Or more intelligent. Not many people are more intelligent when it comes to combat than him. But for instance, you know, the age-old saying when it comes to martial arts is no martial art is better than another. You just have a better practitioner.
Okay.
Like Kung Fu isn't better than karate. It comes down to the practitioner.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
So once he memorizes these styles, he has access to them forever?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
So I couldn't just sit there and not fight him, and he wouldn't know what to do because he doesn't have a style to use. So I couldn't just sit there and not fight him. So
right, because he can. First of all, he's already a master hand-to-hand combatant,
right.
And he just picks up styles as he fights, and he keeps them. He retains those styles.
I see.
So even if you didn't fight him, he would still mess you up because he's still very capable.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying? He's a great villain. Great villain. He does that. That's not a superpower. He just has photoreflexive memories.
I see.
There's another character that's very similar, but to a lesser degree. It is his mutant power. His name is Cypher, Douglas Ramsey, and Cypher can. His ability. It used to be whack. he could just understand all languages. He can read any language, and he can learn any language. Any language. Any spoken language. If aliens come to Earth, give him a couple minutes, and he'll learn their language from interacting with them.
So this guy was more of a sidekick or something?
Well, he was a member of the New Mutants.
Okay.
And for a long time, his power just was whack because you can't fight with that, right?
Right. That's why he sounds like more of a sidekick or something.
He would merge with this techno-organic entity named Warlock. And Warlock was a techno-organic alien that he would just merge with him and give him abilities. However, now Cypher, because he understands his mutant power, because he's lived for long enough to really understand it, he can read any language. Okay. Which means he can read body language. So he can kind of learn your style too, not to the level of Taskmaster, but he can kind of learn your fighting style too because he can read body language.
And then he can implement it?
Yes. He can read eye language and eye movement. He can read architecture language, which means he can look at buildings and understand the structural integrity of the building because there's a language to architect. You understand what I'm saying? Like he can read, but at first he couldn't do all of that. He could just decipher.
That means
the reason why his name was Cypher.
That means he's a ladies' man too.
Yep. Now, you know what I mean? Because he can now read it. It's so deep. You know what I mean? It's almost to the level of telepathy.
Yeah. That means he could freestyle battle too. That means he could rap.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's cooler now. You still don't want him. You still don't really want to have him in a fight, but you know what I mean. He's a lot cooler now.
He's still, even with all that, that's not going to help.
Well, yeah, because he wasn't an actual fighter for so long.
Oh, that it's going to take a while for him to.
Yeah,
I see.
To just,
I see.
And he has no powers when it comes to combat, so it's not like you're punching harder than, a regular human.
Right. I mean, either does Batman, but he's got tons of experience, tons of combat training.
But Batman would be a lot stronger too.
Right. Right.
Like Batman's strength is like Olympic level.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's been peak physical condition for a human, above peak. Sure. And, so he'd have Olympic level strength. Sure. Cypher doesn't have Douglas Ramsey Cypher doesn't have Olympic level anything.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying? He's not even in peak physical. I mean, I guess he's in as good a shape as he could possibly be, but I mean, for most of his comic career, he's been, a teenager to young adult. You know what I mean?
Wait, what do you mean he's in the best shape that he could be?
I mean, I guess he's in the best shape that he could be, but I mean, when you're in a non-combat role, right?
Oh, I see.
Why, you're not going out of your way.
He's at least got his breath up because he has to run with these folks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatnot.
Yeah. It's not like he's in the gym hitting the weights.
Right.
And you understand what I'm saying?
He's not actually throwing punches. He's not throwing punches and whatnot.
Right.
Doesn't really have his shoulders.
Right.
His shoulders, triceps.
Yeah, he's not.
He's got his quads. He's probably got some quads.
I mean,
running.
But yeah, that Taskmaster character is a great character. Mm-hmm. Great character that I think is going to pose. It's going to be good to see him on screen. Many people are going to watch the movie just to see Taskmaster because he's a great villain character. He's went toe to toe with Captain America, Daredevil, Punisher, like some of the best of them. Deadpool, like toe to toe with them. And beaten them before. Moon Knight, like these are people he's beaten before.
Has he been in any of the movies yet?
Taskmaster?
Yeah.
No. Nope. This is the first film he'll be in.
Okay. Yeah, he's kind of got a Cobra meets like Punisher kind of look.
Are you looking at the movie costume?
I'm just looking online.
Oh, yeah.
There's just a bunch of different.
Yeah, the movie costume not so much, but the older normal Taskmaster costume that everyone knows is pretty cool. He's got like the hoodie
Oh yeah, I see that one.
with like the white skull type face.
Yeah, that's the Punisher looking
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, that's Taskmaster. Yeah, he's cool. He's a cool character. Sometimes you see him with his version of Captain America's shield. He has like the Daredevil Billy Club that he pulls out of the boot.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the bow and arrow like Hawkeye, because you know he can master all that stuff too. Like he watches Captain America throw his shield, and he
So
throws.
the latest iteration of him has like a Jason looking mask on. Is
Yeah,
that the
it's
one
like
that's going to be for the movie? Is that the one he's going to have for the movie?
I'll just post the picture in Messenger right now
Okay.
of the one for the movie. I just sent it to you.
Okay. Oh yeah, I see.
That's how they have him for the movie.
Yeah.
But notice he's got the shield. A la Captain America.
Right.
I believe the sword is a la the Black Knight, who hasn't showed up yet.
Okay.
He
I saw he was
he'll,
doing the. I saw he was imitating Black Panther's like X across his chest thing too
where I didn't.
in one of the pictures.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. I know he usually has like, in some cases he'll have like Hawkeye's bow and arrow. He'll have like the Black Knight sword. Usually the skull mask is. Yeah, I'm gonna send you a picture now to show you what I mean.
Oh,
I'm sending you this picture now. This is how he normally looks. And if you notice, he has a bow and arrow.
oh man, they fired Hartley Sawyer from The Flash. The dude,
Yeah,
this
for some
Mr.
incendiary
Stretch.
comments.
Oh really? That dude, I kind of like that dude on that show.
Some anti-Black Lives Matter comments.
Oh really?
hmm
Damn.
Did you see the pic I just sent?
Yeah.
Notice he has the bow and arrow.
Yep.
That's how he normally looks. He's got the shield on his arm. He's got the sword. Like, these are things he's learned. He learned, watching Hawkeye use the bow and arrow, so he uses the bow and arrow. He fought Captain America, so he uses a shield. You know what I mean?
I see.
He picked that up. These are things he's mastered just from watching Cap or Hawkeye. That's why he has the shield. That's
Right.
why he has the bow and arrow. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because he picked it up. But that's generally that's the look that everyone knows Taskmaster to have. The movie look is he has a newer look that people didn't really like, but that's the look they went with for the movie. Which
Yeah,
just
it's kind
makes
of
sense.
more streamlined for a movie, more like slick
And armored.
movie.
It
Yeah,
just kind of
armored.
makes sense.
Yeah.
At first I don't like the mask. I'm not a fan of the mask. I don't have a problem with the outfit. I'm just not a fan of the mask. I think the mask is a little weird. But no complaints. I'm glad that there's gonna be Taskmaster. I think his hoodie is weird. Like, why blue, white, and orange? Like, that's kind of weird. Just go with the white hoodie. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I think it's supposed to be red or something. It's supposed to be blue, white, and red.
Orange.
Oh, orange like his shield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he goes blue, white, orange. Those are
Okay.
usually his colors. Blue,
Okay.
white, orange. But yeah, so that'll be cool. I think Black Widow. I keep saying Black Widow is a bad choice for a film, but then again, like the next 3 Marvel movies, on paper are like bad choices, right? Black Widow, Eternals, Shang-Chi, the Master of Kung Fu.
That'll be interesting to see how Shang-Chi works out.
I mean, I guess they want to do it like an old school Shaw Brothers Kung Fu flick.
Oh, is that how they're going to do it?
I mean, that's what the last things I read a couple years ago
Okay,
indicated.
that could be interesting.
But again, that's a crap lineup when you have the Marvel Comics lineup. Like
right.
you have the entire Marvel Comics lineup at your disposal, and your next 3 movies consecutively are Black Widow, the Eternals, and Master of Kung Fu. Comics that nobody read.
Yep, they're expanding.
Yeah, but that's
get more money.
But the expansion that they're choosing it's poor. Now, the good thing that Marvel has and Disney has in their favor is Disney takes crappy Marvel characters and makes good movies. They have a history of taking crap and making good movies out of them. They made a good movie out of Iron Man. They made a good movie out of Captain America, and they made good movies out of Thor. And these are crap comics.
Oh, there you go.
Now the thing is, they went further into the toilet bowl for crap because nobody read Black Widow. There weren't Black Widow comics. Nobody read it. If no one, trust me when I tell you, nobody read Eternals. And very few people were buying the Master of Kung Fu comic. It hasn't even come out since like the 70s or 80s because no one was buying that book. Because why would you? You know what I mean?
I'm sure they'll be able to market it. It'll be something different.
I'm just saying that the lineup is crap. I'm not saying that the movies won't be good. The lineup is crap.
Yeah.
When you have Fantastic Four. Listen, Marvel has so many good characters. And they're like digging into the wells. Like they're really digging into the vault to pull. And I get it. There's the diversity thing. There's
that, and there's people are always accusing Hollywood of lacking creativity. So at the very least, by resurrecting some stories people aren't as familiar with, you kind of get the creative angle. You get something like that feels somewhat fresh.
So, with the exception of Taskmaster, Black Widow's probably going to have, a Jason Bourne type formula to it.
Right.
Master of Kung Fu is probably going to be a Kung Fu movie. Like, he doesn't have any superpowers.
Right.
He doesn't fight people with superpowers.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it's probably going to be a Kung Fu flick. The only thing that I imagine would be, really creative is Eternals.
Right.
But the problem with Eternals is nobody understands Eternals.
Right.
The comics are just really weird. So right. and boring.
Wasn't that the video game? Was that the same as the video game we used to play when we were younger?
No.
Oh, that's not what I'm thinking of?
Nope.
You know what I'm thinking of?
Yeah, that Sega game.
Yeah, what was it called?
Game. Eternal Warriors or something like that.
Right. Oh, it's not even that.
The fighting game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, this is Eternals are kind of like you're gonna have to set up. Like Eternals are really weird. It's really weird. It's a weird comic. In many cases, very boring.
Okay.
Very important. Very important to the Eternals. I think there's only a total in the history of Eternals. There's probably a total of 30 issues.
Oh yeah, boring's never good. I gotta switch that up.
Well, I mean, it's boring stuff. It's important to Marvel, but it's a boring comic. I mean, it didn't last. Okay. There were only 2 series. One that came out in like the 70s, and another one that came out in the early 2000s. That was only like 6 issues. Okay. For totaling like maybe 36 issues total.
So that means that they can play with it, take some creative license, do what they want.
They did already. They certainly already have taken creative license. Okay. They've made male characters into females and changed the races of some characters, which is fine because no one knows the difference anyway.
Okay.
and it's fine.
And then on the 70s, you know, they keep doing all these throwback, like, you know, 80s, you know, they just did the 80s Wonder Woman, and like whatever they did the
Even
90s.
Captain Marvel was in the 80s, right?
Right. So they might, maybe they'll do maybe they'll do the 70s Eternals. Do something crazy like that.
They could. I think they're probably gonna. The Eternals film will probably cover several different periods in Earth history.
Okay.
Because they're Eternals.
Right. There you go.
So it'll definitely probably cover several different periods, ancient history, you know what I mean, to present day.
Yeah.
Because they're Eternals. So I imagine that film will jump all over, you know, history.
I wonder, have they finished it yet, or are they still working on it?
I believe it's finished. It was supposed to come out this year.
Oh, okay. Because I was gonna say, with something like that, they've lived through so much, through so many eras, they could touch on what's going on now. Maybe they'll wait till the next one. Maybe it'll be like some grander statement, like everything that they've been through, everything that they've seen, like
I think COVID and other things have caused Marvel to change their agenda for film. Like Marvel put out last year all the movies that they were coming out with and all the TV shows. They put them out at a comic convention. Like we already know everything that they have planned for this particular phase. I believe it's phase 4.
Okay.
But COVID hurt Disney.
I'm sure it did.
When it comes to movies, it helped DC.
Oh, okay.
Well, because Marvel wanted to put out Eternals this year, right?
Right.
And they wanted to put it out as the big movie ending the year.
Okay.
So they were putting out, the first movie they were supposed to put out earlier this year was Black Widow.
Right.
Well, now Eternals isn't going to come out till next year. So if they put Black Widow out, it's very likely that Wonder Woman is going to be the best superhero movie to come out this year.
Wait, but when is Wonder Woman coming out?
August.
And that's not going to be affected?
Huh?
That's not going to be affected by this whole thing? It's not going to be pushed back?
It was already pushed back to August.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Wonder Woman was supposed to come out in like March or April.
Okay.
Black Widow was supposed to come out at the same time.
Right.
Which left Marvel in a position to be able to put out Eternals at the end of the year and still potentially win the year with a big blockbuster film.
Okay.
Now Marvel's Wonder Woman, based upon history and current trajectory, is going to be another blockbuster. Like the first Wonder Woman is great.
Mm-hmm.
Better than a large percentage of every Marvel movie, right? Like that first Wonder Woman is just a phenomenal, highly acclaimed movie.
Mm-hmm.
So we are expecting the same for the second Wonder Woman, which effectively, I don't care what Marvel does. Effectively, you might as well say Wonder Woman is going to win the year for DC.
Okay.
So Marvel's behind now because they couldn't put out New Mutants this year. The only film that they're going to put out this year is Black Widow. That's it. Everything got pushed back. Black Panther was supposed to come out in 2021. It's not going to come out till 2022. So now Marvel's scrambling. So their agenda has to change because DC had a hit with Joker.
Right.
They're probably going to have another hit with Wonder Woman.
And
Batman
doesn't. When do you think Black Widow's going to come out?
I think it's November.
Okay.
Batman doesn't have to be a hit. It's going to sell out theaters everywhere.
With
even
Robert,
for people,
Robert Pattinson.
Yeah, people are going to see that Batman movie.
Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, Robert Pattinson is a hell of an actor.
I liked him in The King. I thought he was great.
And he was in this other crazy movie, like based on like Long Island, with his brother, who like has some mental issues, and they're like criminals, like low-level criminals like wilding out on Long Island. It was an incredible drama. But I was sold. He does his thing. He's a great actor. I think
I
he'll kill
I
it in
thought
the Batman
I
role.
thought I thought he was really great in The King, like really great.
Yeah.
So Marvel is kind of scrambling. So the odds are they're going to go full steam ahead on X-Men and Fantastic Four way sooner than they plan to. Because they need a blockbuster with name recognition. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Keep in mind, they're also not just competing with DC, they're competing with Sony. And Sony's getting better. People liked Venom. That Morbius trailer looks really good.
I don't know how people liked Venom.
People liked it. Venom
weird.
2 has the potential to be good. That Morbius trailer looks really good. And people loved, not liked, loved to the tune of an Academy Award, Spider-Verse.
Oh, yep. That was dope.
Yeah, and the sequel to that is coming out.
Remind me what Morbius is again?
The vampire movie
Oh, I don't know if I've seen that preview yet.
with Jared Leto. Oh, that trailer is awesome. It looks so good.
The check it.
I don't know how they're gonna Marvel's putting out a Blade movie, but that may have to get.
They've been talking about that for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, they already cast it. It's coming out.
What's his name in it? The young black cat. Well, not young, but
Marshala.
Yeah, is that him?
Yeah.
Is he in it?
Yep.
He's gonna be Blade, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I don't know
he'll
that.
Kill it.
Well,
He'll
it all
role.
depends. It all depends if Marvel even wants to put it out after Morbius.
Wait, Morbius is the same. Oh, Morbius is Sony.
Yeah, and he's a vampire.
Wait, so what are they like? They're competing with each other?
Of course, Sony is Sony.
Oh no, sorry, I must have been confused. I must have thought. Okay, Sony and Marvel is Disney, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I wouldn't see Hollywood is funny like that to me. If anything, when other people try to like do something, Hollywood often tries to like do the same thing. Like if anything, but maybe comic books don't get down like that.
well, because you don't. Marvel owns the Morbius character, right? Marvel Comics does.
Okay.
Sony owns the rights to do them for film.
Okay.
So does Marvel want to compete with itself by putting out 2 vampire movies that in the comics are in the same universe?
Wait, but how is that competing with itself if they don't own the movies, though?
Because
That's a weird.
people buy tickets. It's kind of like Jay-Z and Nas don't put out an album on the same day, right? So Sony is purposely putting out a movie on the same day that Marvel is putting out a movie next year. We don't know what movie Sony's putting out, but they're putting it out on the same day because they're actively, even though they have a business relationship with Marvel because they let Disney borrow Spider-Man
Mhm.
for the Avengers films and all of that.
Yeah.
Their Spider-Man universe, Venom, Morbius, is their own thing. Marvel has nothing to do with that. I mean, Disney has nothing to do with that.
Okay.
Well, so you put out Blade. Blade has to be good. It can't just be okay if Morbius is a hit.
Okay.
If Blade is any less than a hit, then it fails, even if it makes its money. So you got to be really careful. It's like, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this.
Well, you remember Armageddon and Deep Impact came out around the same time.
Yeah, but this is different. This is different. And when Armageddon and Deep Impact came out, people went to see Armageddon and not Deep Impact.
That's true. I like Deep Impact.
I didn't think it was a bad film, but people definitely made Armageddon the big movie. You know what I
They
mean?
did, yeah, they did. Yeah, I definitely like Deep Impact better. I also saw that one first.
Yeah, I don't get me wrong. I know how Hollywood works, but that's also the problem. Like Marvel does not want to have a bad movie.
Yeah.
Disney doesn't.
Right.
Disney doesn't want to have a bad movie.
They don't want to cut into each other's
profits. Sony doesn't care.
Okay.
Because Sony gets paid if Spider-Man is successful either way.
Okay.
And Disney is making Spider-Man successful.
Okay.
It's Sony's character. Disney's borrowing it.
Okay.
So they don't care. We don't care if we hurt your movie universe unless they negotiate some sort of deal, which is rumored that like Venom is going to be in the, that the Sony universe is going to acknowledge the Marvel universe.
Okay.
And that they're going to show the first hints of that in Venom, because apparently Vulture is going to be in Venom in prison. Okay. Michael Keaton.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But they can do that because Sony actually owns that character, even though he was in the Marvel movie. Sony owns all the Spider-Man related properties.
Okay.
Which would include Vulture. And Marvel went out of their way in that first Spider-Man movie to show like 10 villains from Spider-Man's mythos.
Okay.
Most people didn't recognize them who don't read comics, but you had like Scorpion 2, Vulture, the Prowler.
All in the first Spider-Man, you said?
Yeah. Yep. And the first Marvel Spider-Man movie, the one from Disney.
Who was that?
Homecoming.
Okay.
Spider-Man Homecoming.
With the same guy who's in the Marvel movies, you mean?
Yeah, Tom Holland.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, the first Disney Marvel movie they put out under Disney was Homecoming.
Okay.
Tom Holland. And Michael Keaton played the Vulture.
Right.
And Donald Glover played the Prowler.
Oh, right. You didn't know that yet, or? Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I got you.
And Scorpion was you only knew it was Scorpion because he had the Scorpion tattoo.
Okay.
And
who had the Scorpion tattoo?
Scorpion.
No, but I mean, who? You said you only knew that because he had the Scorpion tattoo. What character was that?
Scorpion.
I mean, what did he do in the movie? Like,
he fought Spider-Man on a barge.
Oh, okay.
And then Scorpion 2 and Shocker.
Okay.
And like there were a bunch of Spider-Man villains that appeared. I mean, the lizard has already appeared.
To me, I mean, Marvel is doing, Marvel's on a roll. Marvel's doing well, and people love Blade. So I feel like they would have to do, something incredible with Morbius to take away from Blade like that.
Comic-wise, neither one is more popular than the other.
Yeah, I just mean in the movies. I'm just talking about like Mahershala Ali. People love Blade. People have been talking about coming back for a long time, and then Marvel is just, a powerhouse and just talking about all of that stuff. And then on top of it, if you get the
thing that Sony has the advantage on is that Morbius has a better story than Blade does.
Okay.
his story, his overall backstory is just better than Blade's. Like Morbius has his own comic right now. Blade is a member of the Avengers, but Morbius has his own comic right now that just came out like 4 or 5 months ago. But Morbius just is a more interesting character than Blade. And Blade isn't a bad character. Morbius' story is just much more compelling.
So Morbius is new?
No, Morbius has been around for quite a long time, since the 70s.
Oh, okay.
His story is just much more compelling. And he's not necessarily a bad guy. He's not even really a vampire in the traditional sense of the word, any more than Blade is a vampire in the traditional sense of the word.
Okay.
Blade is like half human, half vampire, but Morbius is someone who became a vampire as a result of an experiment rather than actually being bitten by a vampire.
Okay.
He was doing experiments with vampire bats to cure a blood disease that left him as a human with all the attributes of a vampire bat.
Okay. That's interesting for Jared Leto after having been Joker, just once, and then, having been disappointed to not play him again or more. But I like Jared Leto a lot.
Yeah, I do too.
And I actually was one of the few people that thought he played an incredible Joker in a otherwise horrible movie.
Oh yeah, I didn't think he played an incredible Joker at all, but I do like him quite a bit. Mike?
Yeah.
Hold on just 1 second.
Okay.
Did you get that?
Yeah. Let me take a look.
Just watch it.
Okay, I'll take a look. What, you want me to look at it right now, or?
Yeah, looks good, right?
Yeah.
And then they got the Michael Keaton Vulture cameo at the end.
Yep.
Like, yeah, that trailer is a strong trailer for Sony, man.
Yeah.
When I first saw it, I'm sure you've seen it because I put it on Comic Sense. It's just a
Yeah,
very strong. It's a very strong trailer. And a lot of people were surprised at how good the trailer was. People who don't really appreciate Sony's take on the Spider-Man mythos were like, yo, you just can't argue. And what you don't know is that he might be the best cast for a superhero character since Robert Downey as Tony Stark.
Okay.
Like, he looks like Michael Morbius.
Okay.
Hold on, as a matter of fact, I should and will. I will, actually, not should. I'm just going to, because I'm cool like that. I'm cool like that. I'm cool like that. I'm cool like that. I'm going to send you another picture. Because I'm cool like that. You feel me?
Feel you.
I'm going to send you a picture right now. Depending on how well this works out. Hold on, let me. Shed some light on the subject in here. Mike?
Yeah.
You there?
I'm here.
All right, hold on. I'm snapping a picture that I'm gonna send to you. I just pulled out. I happen to know right where it was at. So I literally just pulled out my copy of Morbius #1. Mike,
Yep.
did you get that?
Yeah. Yep.
That's what he looks like currently.
Okay.
So I mean, Jared Leto's actually great.
Yep.
Cast as him. Like he's a great casting. Really good choice. So I don't know. Like I gotta see a Blade trailer now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I gotta see that Blade trailer to really know if you know we're talking competition.
Right.
Because like we've seen Blade 3 times.
Yeah.
2 of them sucked.
Yeah. That's true.
One of them was brilliant.
Yeah.
Blade 1 was great.
Yeah.
Like greatness. But the rest,
Yep.
And that was Wesley Snipes' fault though.
What do you do?
He just didn't. He was incredibly hard to work with.
Oh.
He made the movie very difficult to film. He didn't want to do any scenes with any of the actors.
Yeah.
And if you remember, Ryan Reynolds was in that film.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, he was in Blade 3.
Okay.
He was on the team of vampire hunters.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah. He was more buff, bigger, younger, had a beard.
Okay.
So I'm waiting for him to reprise his role in Deadpool, but I'm not going to hold my breath because I don't really think it's ever going to happen.
What, Ryan Reynolds?
No, Disney doing Deadpool.
Oh, okay.
Well, because they would have done it by now, right? Like Deadpool was consistent. The second movie came out 2 years after the first.
Wait, but it hasn't been that long, has it? Since
Yeah.
the second movie?
Yeah.
I thought the second movie just came out a little while ago.
Yeah, like 2017, 2016, something like that. 17.
As time flies.
Yeah. And Disney, honestly, it's like a catch-22, right? Because Deadpool is clearly a runaway, highest rated R movie, runaway success.
Yeah.
Runaway.
Is that the fan you have running in the background?
Yeah, I'm gonna move away from it.
Okay.
Because I'm not gonna turn it off. It's a runaway success. So
Yeah.
they have a franchise that they know is profitable. The problem is, if they put it out, they're immediately going to destroy the franchise and lose money.
Okay, so that was 2 years ago. So technically, okay, it came out in 2018.
Okay.
I guess I haven't heard any plans for another one anytime soon.
Well, they said that they're bringing the franchise into the MCU, but nobody really believes them.
Oh, okay.
Because it's an R-rated franchise.
Right.
And the moment they slap a PG-13 rating on it or lesser, so that it can show on Disney Plus, everybody is going to talk about how they destroyed the franchise, and they'll probably be right.
And that's the thing, Disney Plus can't mess with any R-rated stuff.
Not that they can't, it's just that they're not going to. because it's Disney. Like, think about it. Disney has almost its entire catalog on Disney Plus, except for its 2 horror films.
Which is?
Something Wicked This Way Comes, and I forget the name of the other one. It's an older film, but they're Disney movies. Like, Something Wicked This Way Comes was produced by Disney, but you can't watch it on Disney Plus. And that doesn't even have an R rating.
I don't know, man. I feel like if Disney wants the bag, Disney can make, and it seems like it's its own rule, and it's not even a hard, fast rule. It seems like
people were mad because they watched Splash on Disney Plus, and it's this new edited version of Splash.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they've edited things out of the movie.
Oh, man.
Because it's Disney Plus.
Well,
Disney has a reputation that they value,
right?
And because of it, you're not going to see an R-rated Disney. And I'm not going to speak that into existence. I'm just saying, for the foreseeable future, don't expect to see R-rated Disney programming.
Right.
They take enough slack for having, princesses from the LGBTQ community.
Okay.
So, yeah, don't expect. I don't expect to see Deadpool in Disney's catalog. And that doesn't mean Disney doesn't do R-rated stuff. They do. It just comes on Hulu.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
It's Hulu Plus, where you get to see Disney's more, Disney owns Hulu. So where you get to see programming that maybe they didn't produce, but that they sponsor or purchase.
Right.
You know what I mean? But that comes on Hulu. It doesn't come on Disney Plus. They had a couple cartoons that were set to come on Hulu that they pulled, like Ghost Rider, which tells me that. But they pulled Ghost Rider because I think Marvel wants to do something movie-wise or television show-wise with Ghost Rider. They had a cartoon planned for Hulu, which I can't imagine a Ghost Rider cartoon being anything at a minimum PG-13, at a maximum R-rated. We debated in Comic Sense about whether an R rating is necessary in all cases for certain movies. And of course, I don't think so. There's so many good movies, strong movies with strong content that are PG-13.
Right.
But you can't do Wolverine. You can't do a Wolverine solo movie without an R rating. And it'd be good. Can't do a Punisher movie without an R rating. Like, there's some movies you just can't do without an R rating. These are killers. They kill you. You see blood. You understand what I'm saying?
Maybe they should do something like a Disney adult or something, and like find a way for like adults to put their info in, like, maybe from their ID or something, and like prove that you're of a certain age so you can unlock certain movies.
I think that would be a good idea. Like, even now, right? Like, right now, if they wanted to do a current Hulk film, they couldn't do it without an R rating.
Why?
Because Immortal Hulk is incredibly graphic.
Okay.
The comic Immortal Hulk, the current comic is graphic. Like, graphic. They took the Hulk back to his horror roots. And it's arguably one of the most brilliant comics out. But it's crazy graphic. People die, and in cruel and horrible ways. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, the Hulk dies almost every issue. Bruce Banner does.
Wait, how can he die every issue?
Sometimes he kills himself.
How does that work?
He takes a gun and shoots himself in the head.
No, like, how does he come back?
because the Incredible Hulk is immortal.
Oh, okay.
So Bruce Banner will kill himself, and as soon as nightfall hits, because now he turns to the Hulk every night. As soon as nightfall hits, the immortal Hulk,
Oh, jeez.
the body turns into the immortal Hulk, and Bruce Banner's right back to life again.
It's dark.
Yeah.
Kind of a dope idea, though.
Yeah, it is. That's why it's one of easily the most brilliant comic books out. Like those issues of Immortal Hulk are hard to find and pretty expensive because that run, it's only like an issue like 30, but it's brilliant. Like the writers just decided we're taking the Hulk back to his roots. It's going to be totally different than most people know of the Hulk. Now it's just, Bruce Banner doesn't want to be the Hulk. He's in conflict. He dies all the time. But now the Hulk is immortal. The Hulk can't die. And not only can the Hulk not die, Bruce Banner can only turn into him, like, at night. And not only that, it's super psychological because, like, Bruce Banner, when the Immortal Hulk is walking around as the Immortal Hulk, Bruce Banner's inside of him. And the Hulk is like a schizophrenic. Like, he's got multiple personality disorder.
Okay.
And each disorder is a different version of the Hulk. Like, there's the Gray Hulk, there's Devil Hulk, and they're all, Bruce Banner is like talking to all of them while he's stuck inside the Hulk.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He dies, he goes to hell. He has to deal with like the One Below All, which is Marvel's version of the devil.
Okay.
Like, the book is graphic.
Yeah.
Like, the way the Hulk has killed people is kind of crazy. This particular version of the Hulk, the way he's killed his enemies is kind of crazy. And he's gonna kill you. This ain't no Hulk smash. He's gonna kill you. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, he's warped. He looks warped. Like, this version of Hulk just looks warped. He don't look like your regular Hulk. He looks really warped. Mind you, there's been a bunch of different incarnations of the Hulk, which is why he has all these incarnations inside of him, because he's been them before. He's been Green Purple Shores Hulk Smash Hulk. He's been Planet Hawk. He's been World War Hawk. He's been Devil Hawk. He's been Gray Mr. Fix-It Hawk. He's been Intelligent Hawk. And all these Hawks are inside of him. And now he's Immortal Hawk, which is, Devil Hawk is probably the worst incarnation, but Immortal Hawk is pretty bad. Like, Immortal Hawk is not a good guy. He's not a bad guy. He is not a good guy, though. And he's going to kill you. Period. As a matter of fact, issue 25 tells a story in the far future where the One Below All possesses Immortal Hawk, and effectively they call it the green death. Effectively, he destroys everything in the universe until there's only him. Everything. He's just going around destroying entire planets, getting rid of the whole species. And he literally, they're just telling the story that takes place in the far future. And literally, he's going to destroy the last two beings. And they kind of send a message back to the past, which is the present day, to the one person that they think will be smart enough to understand the message because they're so far advanced, and it's the leader. I don't know if you know who the leader is. The leader is like, he's a very underplayed enemy of the Hulk, which I think if I were writing it, he would be the Hulk's most dangerous enemy. He pretty much is the Hulk, except where the Hulk is super strong, he's super smart. Like, he's green, and he's got an incredibly long head. And when I mean long, I don't mean from front to back. I mean from like top to bottom.
Okay.
Like, his head is like 2 feet tall, and that's all brain. It's like his brain is a skyscraper, and he's green the whole nine. And his powers are exactly the same as the Hawk's, except where the Hawk's is strength, his is brains, intelligence.
Okay.
And he's called the leader. And he's a villain, but he's the one who receives the message from the future to try to stop Immortal Hawk, because in the future, Immortal Hawk is possessed by the One Below Awe and effectively destroys everything in the universe until there's just him left. Everything. Yeah, the book Immortal Hawk is a great book, but it's pretty graphic. Like, you couldn't do Immortal Hawk without an R rating.
And when they show him destroying everything, that includes like his colleagues and everything.
Everything. At the end of the book, there is nothing left in the universe except for him.
Right. But do they show those fights?
No. The book is written from the perspective of these two aliens that they're neither male nor female,
Okay.
but they're kind of like coming back together after having been separated for a while, because they're trying to like send these eggs across the universe, across space-time, with messages of warning.
Hey, not to interrupt you, you didn't have any luck repositioning the fan?
Oh, I did. I just kind of casually ended up back in front of it without thinking. So they're trying to send these eggs or messages of warning across space-time to like warn about what's happening. And they realize that they're like the last known species on the last known planet in pretty much what they know to be existence, and that the Green Death is coming. But you don't know what the Green Death is, because this particular book, while it's an issue of Immortal Hawk, you don't see Immortal Hawk. You just see these two aliens, or these two evolved man or whatever they are. You know what I mean? They have weird names that have like punctuation in the center of them. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, like whatchamacallit's name? What's that singer and freaking crap? What's his name? The guy who did the electric car. Starts with an E.
Elon Musk?
Yeah, Elon Musk and Grimes have a baby who has a weird, like, letters and symbols and exclamation points for the name.
Yeah, that's how their names are, and so, you know, they just kind of meet up and they're talking about, you know, breaking protocol and sending out more of these like eggs than they've ever done, and they're worried about how it can mess up space time, but they're like, man, we just got to do it because the Green Death is coming. And you know, it goes into this monologue about the Green Death and how it destroys, but you don't ever see the Hulk. You just it just follows them until like the last few pages when the Green Death approaches, and you realize it's the Hulk possessed by like Devil Hawk, and it's like this blob of like green faces and souls that can take the shape of like this monstrous thing. And like the creature wants to know why, you know, to the Hulk, like why all of this, and the Hulk's, you know, only response is something like, because Hawk can, and Hawk wants to be the only one there is. And then he destroys them, like he rips the planet in half and destroys life, but they had already sent out the eggs, and that's where the monologue talks about, we sent it out to the only person we think could understand, and it was from this current timeline, and the leader receives it. But yeah, he like, they don't really show the battles, they just kind of tell a story of how he went through space, just straight destroying planets.
And this is while he's still infected with the One Below?
Yeah, he's possessed by the One Below Odd hasn't possessed him anymore. He now is in complete control of his body. Or the Hulk himself wouldn't have had the ability to destroy the universe.
Okay.
The One Below Awe wanted his body because the One Below Awe is confined. The thing about the One Below Awe is it's confined to its realm, unless it can get a host that it can use, and it just can't take a host. It has to really, you know, there's all these contingencies preventing it, and so it looks for hosts, because the One Below Awe is, you know, the most powerful entity in all of Marvel, period. The single most powerful entity is the One Above Awe.
Okay.
There is no entity in Marvel Comics more powerful than the One Above Awe. it's like Marvel's representation of God.
Okay.
Nothing is more powerful. Well, then it's the antithesis to the one above all is the one below all.
So where is the one above all in all of this?
In the Immortal Hulk comics,
Yeah.
not in the comics. One above all just isn't in the Immortal Hulk comics. One below all is.
Oh, okay.
Because the one below all was actually created in like issue 12 of Immortal Hulk. You know, that was his first appearance. Its first appearance. The one above all
So
has been around in Marvel forever.
okay, but he's just not around when the one below all is wreaking all this havoc.
No,
Okay.
because they didn't write. So the one above all has been around in Marvel forever. But the one above all always rarely interferes. You can count on your hands the time the one above all has appeared in a comic in the form of a human.
Okay.
Like you could literally count. There may be like 4 times.
So even when all of existence is at stake.
Yeah. Well, all of what we know to be existence is at stake. Well, yeah, because the one above all is responsible for everything, like every existence, and there's more than one existence in the Marvel universe.
Oh, okay. So this is just one existence that's at stake.
Yeah, Earth Prime or our existence, but there
Okay.
are other existences. You understand what I'm
Okay.
saying? Like there are
Yeah.
other existences in the Marvel universe. So like the one above all usually doesn't interfere and stuff like that. It just doesn't. It's just kind of Marvel recognizes that the most powerful entity is the one above all, but it never directly interferes in anything. Now the one below all, which is a newer creation and meant to be the antithesis of the one above all, is and it was created in Immortal Hulk. It could be used anywhere because it exists in Marvel now, but the character was created in Immortal Hulk number 12. So,
Okay.
and the reason why is because Bruce Banner always dies and ends up in hell or in some sort of equivalent for a time period until Immortal Hulk, till he turns into Immortal Hulk at Nightfall.
Right.
So they introduced the one above all, below all, as a, you know, he becomes aware of Bruce Banner and what he is incapable of, and he kind of wants his body as the Hulk, so he can get out of wherever it is he's at, because he can't leave. He can, but he has to have like a host. He has to, and there's a bunch of contingencies by which he can get that host. And yeah, the one above all doesn't really interfere and stuff. The one below all, you know, has started out interfering and stuff from the moment it was created, but the one above all just doesn't. There's too many other powerful beings that the one above all doesn't need to interfere. Like I mean, no one is more powerful than the one above all, but there are very powerful beings: living tribunal, eternity, death, oblivion. Uh, they're all like these abstract entities of pretty much godlike power. The Beyonders, like there's a large pantheon of abstract entities in Marvel that could be God, so to speak. Then there's a lot of them. Galactus, you know what I mean? Like these are just Null, the symbiote god. These are all entities that are, you know, they're not nearly as powerful as the one above all, but to anyone else, they might as well be a god. This is the conundrum you have with the Eternals as a film franchise, because at some point, and they already showed us one, but they're gonna have to introduce the Celestials, and all that stuff comes in conflict with like the Asgard stuff, you know, because the Celestials are obviously more powerful than the gods. Like Odin had beef with the Celestials, who created the Eternals, by the way, and created most of the universe according to them. But Odin, who's part of a god pantheon that's a protector of the 9 realms, one of the realms includes Earth, has always had beef with Celestials. Mind you, Celestials are responsible for the creation of the Eternals, and you know, uh, Thanos is arguably an Eternal. He's related to him by blood, So I don't know. That Eternals film is going to be very difficult and complicated to sell to people because it's really weird.
Right.
Like the Celestials, the whole concept of the Celestials are just weird. I mean, there was one in Guardians of the Galaxy, like there was a dead Celestial that they were like flying through when they were looking for the Infinity Gauntlet. They even got out because people were turning it into like space stations and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
it was a dead Celestial, which or a fallen or a sleeping Celestial, because a lot of times they'll sleep. There was one in America under San Francisco sleeping for years until like the Xmen accidentally uncovered it. I mean, Apocalypse is as powerful as he is because at some point in time in ancient Egypt, he found a ship with celestial technology on it.
Okay.
Like the Celestials, in their opinion, they created the Earth in most planets, in most existence. And they certainly created the Eternals and put them on Earth as in different areas of the world as children. But they created and put the Eternals there. So, but all of that is just kind of weird Jack Kirby space fantasies. Like Jack Kirby just wanted to tell this epic sweeping space saga, and he kind of just convoluted Marvel and told a bunch of boring stories.
Right.
He should have stuck with Stan Lee, but he didn't really get along with Stan Lee,
Yeah.
even though they created like half of the greatest characters in Marvel together. He just didn't like Stan Lee's politics, I guess.
Right.
You know, Stan Lee was very social justice, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
I know for a fact Jack Kirby wasn't a fan of the Black Panther comic, which is why he stopped working with Stan Lee.
Okay.
Because he just wasn't a fan of the Black Panther. So he stopped working with Stan Lee on it. But yeah, I mean, again, maybe it'll be a great film.
Yeah.
Marvel, in many people's eyes, Black Panther. Well, no, Black Panther was a huge success
Yep.
from a comic book that people didn't read.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Which I'm surprised you criticized the formula for Black Widow when the Black Panther film, take away my criticisms, is just a Captain America film with a black man.
Yeah, but it's got so many. It's got um, it's got firsts and other ways that make it like grand, make it something we haven't seen before. You know.
Oh, it does?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't notice.
You know.
No.
That's what was exciting about it.
But yeah, I mean, Black Panther is Captain America. Captain America is Black Panther. They're essentially the same character.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they told it in a different enough way where I didn't notice. Most people, most people wouldn't, unless they were like, comic book folks.
Uh, I think if you scratch beneath the surface and you parallel who Captain America is to who T'Challa is, you'll come to the same conclusion, and you won't even have to dig deep if you just
Yeah,
gave it
but
some real
but
thought.
but Black Pride is still gonna make me love Black Panther, no matter how deep I have to scratch beneath the surface. That's never
Oh,
gonna
you
take
don't
away.
have to scratch beneath the surface at all. I don't even know what Black Pride has to do with the fact that the character is a parallel of Captain America.
It has to
And
do with how exciting the movie was for Black folks.
oh yeah, no, but nonetheless, I'm speaking about the real parallel. Like they're essentially the same character, and that film could have been a Captain America film. I
Right,
understand
but you
they put a lot of black window dressing on it. I'm just speaking that I'm
right,
saying
but
that just
you're asking how I can criticize one and not criticize the other, and I'm telling you like
oh okay, because
because
pride
Black
causes you to overlook
no,
the
because one was like really exciting to me, and the other as like something I've seen a bunch of. I've seen a bunch of, you know, white people like be Russians or spies or white women. I've seen like Eon Flux and a whole
Hmm.
bunch of these other movies where skinny white women are like doing all this acrobatic stuff and like kicking ass and like being spies and all of that stuff. I've never seen a black king of a rich African country with like hidden resources and black excellence bring a bunch of white people together to the movie theaters and to like our imagination and like all of that
Uh,
stuff. It's like totally different.
yeah, I get it. Um, uh, uh, but yeah, the two characters are the same characters essentially. So for me, and that's what I was saying. Like after with everything that you said taken into consideration, if you were critiquing the film from a non-objective point of view, you don't even have to scratch deep, and you can see that it's essentially you could interchange Captain America. I'm not talking about all of the subplots. I'm just talking about the basic superhero film, just the basic superhero premise. They're the same character. Stan Lee created. I mean, they're literally the same character. They both use vibranium. They're both on some level super soldiers. Like they're both the ultimate examples of excellence in their respective countries. Like they're essentially the same character.
Yeah, I mean, just but that is that's the answer to your question. How
Hmm.
why one was why
Yeah, we
one
move.
made
I move past that. I was just continuing. I got you. I had already got your answer, and I was just saying that from all that aside, if we're just, or are you saying that you can't you can't examine the movie in any other perspective or any other way than Black Pride?
No, I mean that's another show. The examination of Black Panther. We should
Oh no, I
we
don't
should
want to
get into
I
that.
don't want to do that show because that's something I mean we can. I don't want to. I was just kind of suggesting based upon the other critique that you made about Black Widow that if accepting your answer, now that I've accepted your answer and I know your answer, could you look at the film? Could you scratch beneath the surface and see what I'm saying about the point I'm making about Captain America?
Yeah, I could. I mean, it would be a lot of. I mean, you said it was like ignoring the sub. I mean, it would be a lot of ignoring of subplots and just like looking at it at a basic level,
Hmm.
um, which is, I mean, which is not as fun. But I could definitely do that.
Yeah, the only reason why I don't want to examine Black Panther is because I'm kind of blue in the face with my criticism of that film.
Right, right. We've
Yeah,
talked about that a bunch.
that's why I can't wait for Black Panther 2 for it just to be a superhero movie.
Okay.
That's what I just want a superhero movie out of Black Panther now.
Rather than what the subplots you mean?
Yeah, because they're fabricated subplots to kind of capitalize off of and placate people. Like that's not what the book is about.
Hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
that's just these are so I'm not familiar with these things. I'm familiar with them in concept, but not in application.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with T'Challa that hoards his wealth from the world and doesn't care about the world. Like that guy doesn't exist.
Right.
I'm not familiar with freedom fighter Killjoy. He just
Okay.
doesn't exist. I'm not
Okay.
familiar with good guy M'Baku. He doesn't exist.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
these so for me it's like
So
you
are they
know,
going to be able to? What are they just going to move past all of that in part two, or is that just not going to be?
well,
How's that going to work?
he's an Avenger. If he's an Avenger, or on the New Avengers Initiative, why would he still be in Wakanda? Any more than he was in Wakanda in the comic book when he became an Avenger.
Okay, so they're just not going to be dealing with M'Baku or any of the
Well,
other stuff.
I don't know. I'm hoping that they don't. I don't want to see the White Ape that you tell me is a good guy and I know he's a bad guy like anymore. Personally, I don't. So I'm hoping they now get back to superhero stuff with Black Panther. Yeah. Like if Submariner is going to be in the movie, Wakanda will probably be destroyed.
Oh, speaking of characters who are parallel to other characters, now you've got Submariner in this universe, and you've got Aquaman in the other universe.
Mm-hmm.
Those characters are pretty similar.
No, they're not similar.
No?
Not at all. Aquaman came after Submariner, but they're not similar at all. Like, they're not similar at all. Aquaman, I guess their origin stories are kind of similar, but as characters,
they're underwater guys. That's not similar.
Submariner isn't really underwater guy. Like, their origin story is kind of similar, but like they don't have Aquaman's real powers. Like they gave him powers for the movies that aren't his powers. Like, he's not super strong. All he can do is like talk to fish.
Right.
Submariner is like one of the strongest people in Marvel. Like he
can't talk to fish, right?
Submariner? No. Okay. He goes toe to toe with the Hawk on a daily basis.
Okay.
Like, he's that strong.
But he can also breathe underwater?
Yeah, he's like a prince. So he's half human, half like Namor. Yeah, he's half human, half prince from like Atlantis. But he's a mutant. So like he's been an X-Men, he's Marvel's first mutant. So he's like been an X-Men. Like, he can fly. The thing with Submariner is he's all about Imperious Rex. Like, he's not really a good guy, he's not really a bad guy. He's just like this arrogant, better than everybody. You know, Black Panther is one of his biggest enemies because he like destroys Wakanda.
Okay.
Because Wakanda and the Atlanteans have always had beef.
Okay.
As has Latveria. It's been like this tripartite war. Latveria is Dr. Doom's country.
And they all have beef with each other?
Yeah, in a lot of cases.
And do they ever team up with one of the other to fight the third?
Sometimes, like, you know, Black Panther did Submariner dirty, because Black Panther can be very shady when it comes to Wakanda. Okay. So he like stabbed Submariner in the back and try to kill him.
Okay.
Try to leave him to die, and try to keep it from the rest of the Avengers.
Damn.
Well, yeah, he hates Submariner. Submariner attacked Wakanda, but they had real beef and real reason to do so. Like, they've always had beef. Wakanda's always had beef with the Atlanteans and Latveria. So like one of the best run countries on Earth in Marvel is Latveria, and Dr. Doom is the ruler of Latveria.
Okay.
But Dr. Doom is a brilliant leader because he's a brilliant man.
Latveria, would you say this is like a Eastern European country?
More like, yeah, like Prussian or something like that. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
So, but the thing is, it's not a real country. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Dr. Doom is, while he's a villain, he's brilliant. Like, the only person on Earth smarter than him, and that's arguable, is Reed Richards. They're the two smartest people in Marvel. Period. And no one else comes close to how smart they are. So as a ruler of his country, his country is one of the most prosperous countries on the planet because he's brilliant. Like, he takes care of his people. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. They have great laws, and he's literally like the genius of all geniuses. So as a ruler, his country prospers. He's not like this despot. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And so he has come into conflict with Wakanda. They're often allies, but they come into conflict not as villain and hero, but as leaders of nations.
Okay.
Well, Namor is the leader of his nation. And these three countries have always kind of had beef with each other for different reasons. And when Namor had, I mean, in the movie, they're probably just going to have Atlantis wage war against Wakanda. But when Namor had the power of the Phoenix, he used it to pretty much cripple almost irreparably Wakanda.
Are these the only three nations that are led by, like superheroes?
Well, the nation that lives on the moon is led by a superhero, by the Inhumans, by Blackout,
Okay.
and they're aware of each other too. It is Blackout and Black Panther who do Namor dirty and try to have him murdered.
There's only one nation on the moon?
Yeah, the Inhumans.
Okay. And it's just it's just, do they take up just like one nation size bit of the moon, or do they have run of the whole moon?
No, just one nation on the dark side of the moon.
Okay. And then just the rest of the moon is just straight up uninhabited?
Yep. But yeah, those are the only. Well, sometimes Magneto has his own nation.
On the moon?
No,
Okay.
on Earth, he had Genosha.
Okay.
He had Asteroid M. Now Professor X is the leader of his own nation.
Interesting.
Of the Xmen.
Yeah.
Like the mutants have sovereignty, and they have their own island called Krakoa, and it's an island nation. So currently, Professor X is the leader of his own nation, but it used to be Magneto, because Magneto used to just like Magneto and the Hulk were like, there were entire wings of the military developed to combat the two of them.
Okay.
Like the United States had the Hulk Busters, other countries had other fail safes in place in case the Hulk showed up, because he's literally a walking nuclear bomb. You see what I'm saying? Like, and I don't mean like a bomb that blows up, but like he's so strong and has so much power that if he snaps and he's mad, he could just destroy your country. And Magneto was the same way. Magneto was pretty much a terrorist. He's not, but he's all about mutant rights, and he's no longer, his approach is closed fist. So he was no longer like, listen, he didn't even call them mutants, he called them homo superior. He's like, we've been oppressed for so long, for him it's like, we're just going to oppress those who oppress us, period.
In this Genosha, or even what was the other one, Krakoa, was there ever like a Marcus Garveyite kind of slant to like creating their own nation?
In what sense?
Well, I mean, Marcus Garvey was like on some, getting people to go to Africa, like back to Africa kind of movement. I guess it would be different because it wouldn't be like back to anywhere for these mutants.
Well, Krakoa could be defined as such, as could Genosha and Asteroid M.
Okay.
Krakoa is current. This is what's currently going on in X-Men. Like, they've declared sovereignty. Any mutants that were bad guys.
But it wasn't like they came from there, they were taken from there, and now they want to go back. This is just the first nation that they've ever tried to develop or whatever. Like,
it's the first that they try to develop as a world power.
Okay.
And they immediately became a world power from the day they decided they were going to be a nation. They became like the most powerful nation in the world.
And they is what, Krakoa?
Yeah.
Or Genosha?
Krakoa. Genosha was the product of mass genocide, where like 16 million mutants were killed in one day.
Okay.
Because Magneto would use these Gestapo tactics.
Right.
Like first he was like, you know what? I'm tired of dealing with the nations, human nations, and how they treat mutants. I'm leaving. And so he left Earth. He used his power to bring an asteroid into Earth's atmosphere and leave it there. And he invited any mutants that wanted to come live there to come live there. Well, that was a threat. You know, most military nations on the world have military protocols called the Magneto protocols
Mm-hmm.
in case Magneto attacks. Because Magneto used to do things like be flying around with 6 nuclear weapons at each arm.
Mm-hmm.
6 nuclear missiles. He'd just be flying around with them and be threatening nations. Like he'd just fly over Russia with and be like, if y'all don't do this, I'm gonna launch this nuke. Like straight up. And when he say launch it, like he just gonna use his powers and launch the nuke. He got it right there with him. You can see it floating right next to him. You know what I mean? Like he
Yeah.
would do stuff like that. And so they finally appeased him and gave him land called Genosha, where mutants would be for mutants and a
And
bunch
this
of,
was this is an island.
you know, it was just like an area of land somewhere on Earth. It wasn't an island.
Okay.
And like these mutant hate groups, which there are a lot of them, I can't even begin to list how many, got together and plotted against it and ended up committing mass genocide and killing 16 million mutants.
Wow.
Yeah, so Magneto kind of like was about to go to war. And but present day, the Xmen now have kind of become like public enemy number one because they don't care about saving the world and saving humanity and living in the world, trying to coexist in the world with people that fear and hate them anymore. We're declaring sovereignty. We live on Krakoa. We're a superpower. We got things to bargain with, and like their Krakoa is a mutant island, so they were able to create these drugs. One drug increases the average human life for 5 years. Another drug cures most human diseases, and I forget what the third one does. They have more, but these are the 3 that they offered humanity
And
as
when you
like
say offer humanity, is this through the normal channels like pharmaceutical companies are going to get it and charge an arm and a leg, and most people aren't going to be able to afford it? Or
so every channel. They even have they even sell it on the black market illegally.
okay,
Like they're cornering the market on every channel.
okay,
But the goal is not to make it difficult for people to get it. The goal is we want you to get it. They're not giving. Wakanda said no, so Wakanda doesn't get the drug because Wakanda
okay,
doesn't want to accept Genosha Krakoa as a nation. There are several countries like they sat down and gave demands to the world. They pretty much
oh,
came
okay,
out. They pretty much came out and was like, "Listen, we're not asking, we're telling, and this is what we have to offer." And only mutants can come to our nation, and we're willing to sit down at the table. We want to be recognized as a nation. We want to have sovereignty, and this is what we have to offer. And they had these 3 drugs, and they're like, any nation that accepts us will receive these drugs. And every nation that accepted them did, but not. It's like 7 nations didn't. One of them being Krakoa, the other one being Atlantis didn't. Namor didn't. Not that Namor had a problem with him because he's a mutant. He just kind of
right,
told Professor X, come back when he was like, I don't believe that you're serious. Come back when you're ready to be serious. Even though Professor X was serious, Namor is just kind of arrogant. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So and I think Namor kind of means something else with it. But yeah, they even after they got accepted and started administering the drugs, they even set up Hellfire Trading Company so that they could even put the drugs out on the black market. Like they're trying to control. It was confirmed that humanity had pretty much 20 years before they were outnumbered by mutants because the rate of mutants being born was just greater than the rate of Homo sapiens.
is Namor supposed to be like Roman backwards or something?
No,
Okay,
no. But just to give you perspective on Namor, he is the oldest Marvel character.
okay,
Like he's their first real superhero character. He's that old.
Interesting that the first one would come out of water.
Say again.
I said interesting that the first one would come out of water.
Well, he's half human,
Yeah.
so it wasn't like he but yes, you're right. That is interesting. But yeah, so the X-Men have their own nation currently, and their nation is hated secretly by a lot of people because like these powerful beings have their own nation. They got these powerful drugs that everybody wants.
But
Like
do you
we
know
got
what is the approximate number? Like, do you know how many mutants there's supposed to be? Because 16 million mutants, that is a lot of mutants.
yeah, they call it the mutants had two crises where they were almost wiped out. Like Genosha got rid of 16 million, and Scarlet Witch, when she said no more mutants, got rid of like 10 million. So almost the
Okay.
entire population were of mutants were wiped out.
Okay.
Like almost the entire population of mutants were wiped out. Yeah, Genosha was a major deal. That's why when you was 16 is a lot, it was major. It was like a greater than 70%.
Okay.
Like it was a major blow. That's why mutants are at this point now. When you look at what the X-Men are doing, you have to picture it like slaves got out of slavery, went through everything that we went through civil rights, and then we get to this point where we're like, you know what? We're tired of dealing with these cops killing us. We're taking all our money. We're taking all of our resources. We're moving to our own country that has been uninhabited up till now. Not only when we get there, we're gonna, our country's gonna be better than everyone else's country, and we're gonna have drugs and technology that you need. That's pretty much what happened in the X-Men. They just got tired of it. And we're like, you know what? Every black person who's ever committed a crime, they get immunity. If they were our enemy yesterday, they get it. We're cool today. Like that's what the X-Men did. They were like, they offered sovereignty to every mutant, even if you were a villain. You're welcome here.
Okay.
And we're making the world give you diplomatic immunity. But as of today, you have to live according to these laws. And if you break these laws, we will punish you. Can't kill humans, or you can't kill Whitey. You understand what I'm saying? You can't kill such and such. You know what I mean? Because if you do, then we're going to punish you. But in the meantime, anything that you did prior to that, we coming to get you out of jail. You know what I'm saying? Like we coming to get you because you have been granted diplomatic immunity by the world as a part of the treaty we signed for them to accept us as a nation.
Okay. And did any of these people that were liberated eventually come to resent the rules on Krakoa?
No, it's still like early on in this reboot.
Okay.
Like it's still very early on. Like X-Men is only on like issue number 9.
Okay.
Like they started every X-Men book over. So what they had was this major event. This brilliant writer named Jonathan Hickman was given carte blanche to do whatever he want with all the X-Men titles. So he canceled them all. He just canceled every X-Men book. And X-Men didn't come out for almost a year. He canceled, and X-Men was like Marvel's most popular comic in the history of comics.
Mm-hmm.
X-Men has many titles. There's X-Men, X-Force, X-Factor, Excalibur, like all Cable, Wolverine. Like there's all these titles that are considered X-books. Like that's one of the thing with the movie. Like the X-Men doesn't need to be with the rest of the characters in the Marvel movies. They were never really with the rest of the characters in the comic books, nor was Spider-Man. The X-Men and Spider-Man pretty much had enough strength and enough characters that they were pretty much their own entity within Marvel. If you had Spider-Man in your book, it was because you wanted to sell your book. You wanted more people to buy your book. If Spider-Man popped up in the Avengers, he had 4 books of his own. The X-Men had like 10 books. You understand what I'm saying? They didn't need to be in an Avengers book. If you had Wolverine in the Avengers, it's because you wanted to sell that book. That was the thing to do. Oh, we got a new character. Let's put Wolverine in the book because people will buy the book because Wolverine's in it. You understand what I'm saying? Or Spider-Man's in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We want to sell an issue of Fantastic Four. Let's have Wolverine appear for no good reason. You know what I mean? So so Jonathan Hickman took over the X-Men and he canceled the whole line. There were a lot of things that went on in the X-Men that he didn't like. I don't blame him. For the past 5 or maybe 10 years since the Marvel movies came out, the X-Men have sucked because Marvel was on this initiative. They canceled Fantastic Four, and they were on this initiative of doing whatever they could do to destroy the X-Men because the Disney didn't own the rights to Fantastic Four in the X-Men for film. So they didn't want to keep putting out hot books that Fox could profit off of by having good stories to draw from their movie franchise. So they kind of like tried to destroy the X-Men and they just outright canceled Fantastic Four. And they tried to replace the X-Men with the Inhumans, who were incredibly boring, and it didn't work. So like the past 5 or 6 years, the X-Men just sucked. It was bad. So Jonathan Hickman didn't like what happened, and now that the X-Men, it's cool to make the X-Men hot again because Marvel owns the stuff. Jonathan Hickman took over, and he canceled every X-Men book, and he created this story, 2 books. He was like, I'm just gonna put out 2 books, and they were called Dawn of X, and that was not the name of the books, but the name of this era in X-Men. It was called the Dawn of X era, and it just came out last year, and they're critically acclaimed, like highly critically acclaimed. He put out two books, 2 6-issue series, House of X and Powers of X, and each book came out one book a week for 12 weeks. House number 1, then Powers number 1, then House number 1, House number 2, Powers number 2, and it told 2 different stories that interwove to tell one greater story. And what it was is they took a character who had been a member, who had been associated with the X-Men forever. Her name is Moira MacTaggert. She's Scottish, and she's like a world-renowned geneticist, and she's always been involved with, Professor X. She, at one point in time, she was like his love interest. She's always been involved with the X-Men. She's like a physician, the whole 9. Well, they took her, and they decided she's been a mutant the entire time. Mind you, it had never been revealed she was a mutant. They decided she's been a mutant the entire time, and her power is reincarnation. That the timeline of Marvel Comics runs through her life because if she dies, she's born again, and a new timeline is started. And in that timeline, she retains all of the memories that she had from her previous life. So this is why the one book was called Powers of X, which really means Powers of 10. The 10 Lives of Moira MacTaggert. This is important because Jonathan Hickman is trying to clean up the history of X-Men and clean up all of the things that he thought were crappy. So what the current theme of X-Men has always been, mutants have been persecuted and oppressed. And you get several stories throughout their history, like Days of Future Past, which paints this really bleak future where mutants are used as hounds to hunt down other mutants so that they can be killed by sentinels. There's a whole bunch of the Mutant Massacre, where the Marauders were hired to kill all these mutants. Genosha, where 16 million mutants were killed. House of M, where Scarlet Witch just pretty much said no more mutants and eliminated like almost the rest of the mutant population. All these major things that happened to mutants. So Moira MacTaggert, as we know it, she grows up, she meets Professor X, he forms the X-Men. The X-Men fight for, the right for mutants to live in a world that fears and hates them by, using mutants to protect humanity and, find and help other mutants. Well, in one of her life, she just lives a normal life, has a couple kids. In her first life, she lives and dies. In her second life, she meets Professor X. The X-Men are formed. So anyway, to make a long story short, she goes through all of these lives, and in every life, the result is always the same. The X-Men fail, and mutants end up getting persecuted to extinction. It's always the same. So by her third life, she kind of realizes that, I keep coming back with all these memories from these other lives. So in her third life, she's now trying to figure out a way, like how do we get to a point where mutants can win and achieve peaceful coexistence. So in her third life, she meets Professor X, and she tries to meet Professor X, and Professor X, we go through our regular timeline of X-Men, and it fails. So in her fourth life, she's like, okay, well, in her third life, she met Professor X and she didn't like him. She thought he was too arrogant, so she tried to go a different way. Well, in her fourth life, she's going to meet Professor X. She's on the airplane, and the airplane crashes, and she dies before she can do anything. In her fifth life, she meets Mystique and Destiny from the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and she's like working to create a cure to eradicate mutants altogether, just get rid of the mutant genes, not kill mutants, but get rid of the genes, hoping that there will never be a problem that mutants have to face if I can just cure the gene. Well, she meets the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and Destiny, who's a precog, she can see the future, this character Destiny, knows what she is and tells her as much, and tells her, I'm going to have you killed. And she goes, but remember this, and when you come back in your next life, do something different. And she was like, you got 10 lives, you'll maybe get 11. Because she knew what her power was, because she could see the future. She was like, if you do everything right, you might even get 11. And she has Pyro Killer. So in her next life, she meets Professor X. They go through the regular X-Men stories. Everything fails. She dies. In her next life, instead of going to Professor X, she goes to Magneto. And they try to conquer the world. They try to have mutants conquer the world, and that fails. So then in her next life, she tries to kill all of the government officials that create all the programs that are opposed to mutants. That fails. She dies. In her next life, she goes to Apocalypse. And she tells Apocalypse what's going to happen, and that fails, and she dies. Like this is Powers of X. Her sixth life is they don't tell you what happens in her sixth life. They just don't tell you for a reason. So in what she believes is her 10th life, which is House of X, it opens up with her going to Professor X when he's very young. And she's like, I don't even have time to talk to you and explain anything to you. And he's like, who are you? And she goes, I know you're a telepath. I know your name is Charles Xavier. She was like, I don't have any time to have a conversation. She's like, just read my mind. And he reads her mind and sees all of her lives. And this is like the current timeline that we're in now. He reads her mind and sees all of her lives. And he then goes to Magneto, and he tells Magneto, he's like, listen, I'm going to mind link you to her because we don't have time to talk about it. And he mind links, and Magneto sees all of her lives. So now him and Magneto are just on the same page. Okay. It's not about Magneto being a villain. We got to figure out a way to save mutant kind and human, to avert the disaster that is going to come. Well, the disaster that's going to come, so what happens is during Powers of X, the first couple issues take place 100 years in the future. So, okay, how it goes is the Powers of 10 goes 10. So there's your 0, your 10, your 100, your 1,000, your 10,000. Like these powers of 10. You know what I'm saying? So it shows the far future, which we then find out is her sixth life. What happens is Apocalypse in the far, far future. This is the whole Powers of X is so dope. What they're doing is they're trying. There's this being, a robotic being named the Nimrod, which was created in like the 80s or maybe the late 70s. And Nimrod was designed to kill mutants. There's all these human programs like the Friends of Humanity and all this legislation that's always been involved in X-Men comics, design, hate groups that want to get rid of mutants, and government groups that want to create fail-safes to protect them from mutants. And one of them is the Sentinel program. And the most dangerous Sentinel ever created was Nimrod, because you can't beat him the same way twice. Like once you beat him one way, he learns from that and he adapts, and you just can't beat him the same way twice. Super strong, you know, has pretty much limitless power at his disposal, and his goal is to just to eradicate mutants. He's not a villain. Like if people are in danger, he'll stop and save them. But he's he's not a human either. He's like artificial intelligence, and his goal is to get rid of mutants. Mutants are a threat, so they're trying to prevent a Nimrod from being created. In order to create a Nimrod, you have to create what's called a mother mode. Mother modes create master modes, which create sentinels. They're these devices that are the, you know, and currently all of the major organizations on Earth, Shield, Hammer, AIM, are all working in conjunction on this project called Orcus to create a mother mode. So the X-Men have to be proactive. They want to stop this mother mode from being created because they want to stop a Nimrod from being born. But the reason why they know that the mother mode is being created is because in the far future, in Powers of 10, Apocalypse has assembled horsemen. Because what happens is in the far future, mutants pretty much go to war with humanity and pretty much get killed. There's very few mutants left. There's mutant chimeras that exist because Mr. Sinister has developed a technique of taking different genes from different mutants and breeding a specific mutant with several different powers from different mutants. Well, Apocalypse is on this, he's fighting Nimrod the Greater and Nimrod the Lesser, and they're trying to find out in the far future at what point in human history did a Nimrod get created? When did they create this Nimrod? And this is what they've been trying to find out. So in the far future, they figure it out. They actually go on a pretty much a death mission where they get killed. Even Apocalypse gets killed just to get this information. He gives it to Wolverine, and Wolverine because Wolverine's still alive. He takes it to this tomb where they have Moira MacTaggert hidden, and he gives her the information. And as soon as she gets process the information in her brain, he kills her so she can be reincarnated with this information. So now we're back in present day, and she has the information and she's giving it to them. So they're trying to stop this Orcus machine from being created, so a Nimrod can't be created, which like all the X-Men die. Like Cyclops knows he's not coming back. Like Nightcrawler just floats into the sun and burns up. But they stop this mother mode and like burn up this mother mode. And when after they do that, they then form this nation called Krakoa. And by the way, they can resurrect mutants. They have like five mutants called the Five. And when their powers work in conjunction, Professor X has to use Cerebro, which he used to use to detect mutants, and he has to every week he has to read the minds of every mutant and download it into Cerebro, and he has to do it every week. He has to like update it every week so that if a mutant dies, they can be resurrected with the memories that he downloaded, the most recent memories that he downloaded. But how they do it is they have 5 mutants that can do it. They have Proteus, who's like, he can manipulate reality. They have Egg, who just creates these eggs that up until recently, they used to call them gold balls. Nobody really knew what the eggs could do. This is well before House of M or House of X, or, you know, Dawn of X. They have Hope, who she can take someone's ability and make it meet its truest potential. So then they have I forget the other girl's name. She can like age you. So what they do is, because Proteus can manipulate reality, right? So he creates the body inside the egg and makes the egg the perfect conditions for the body to grow in. Hope gets in tune with all of them to make their powers work to its greatest potential so that these bodies actually grow inside the egg. The other girl ages you. Elixir, who's like an omega level mutant, as far as he can pretty much raise the dead. He can raise himself back from the dead. He's the one who puts the final touches on it by giving it life. So like mutants don't even have to fear death anymore, because when they die, they just, like all those mutants who died trying to stop Orcus, because they all died. Like Wolverine died, Nightcrawler died, Cyclops died, Mystique died. Like they went on this mission to stop Orcus, and they were successful. But the station was in space, and they ended up, you know, sacrificing their lives to stop, you know, and Professor X just kind of grew them all back. He brought them all back. But that's where it kind of leaves off with, or that's where it picks up now in the new. Then after Dawn of X and House of X ended, he then launched X-Men, X-Force. You know, X-Force is like this. They're CIA. It's like a proactive strike team against threats against mutants or Krakoa. Marauders is pretty much they serve two purposes: to deliver the drugs to the black market and to bring mutants to Krakoa. That because so they what happened was Krakoa is this mutant island. So they
wait. Before you get into that, I'm gonna have to pause you because I have to go to the bathroom and yeah.
Oh, dude, it's 3. I gotta go. I'm sorry. I didn't even know it was that late. I have to be at work at the comic shop at 9.
Oh, okay. All right, man. Well, this was good. Good talking to you. We got a lot of golds here, so. We'll,
yeah. I'll be home earlier tomorrow, so we'll get back. We'll pick up, and hopefully we can get some people on.
All right, cool.
All right, man.
All right, peace.